Living expenses. What does that entail? My mother-in-law's expression reflected genuine confusion. Hey, Brian, can you explain this properly? I pressed, watching my husband squirm. Brian, caught between his mother and me, seemed to shrink under the pressure. I've never received anything like that before, he finally admitted. Let me introduce myself. I'm Carol, a 37-year-old office worker, happily married to Brian. Our whirlwind romance led us to tie the knot within 4 months of meeting each other. Our families were thrilled, especially given our ages. Since our marriage, my relationship with my mother-in-law had blossomed. We often dined out and grew quite close. Initially, Brian and I lived separately but nearby. However, after Brian's father passed away, we decided to live together. Contrary to stereotypes, there was no tension with my mother-in-law. She willingly took on household chores, giving me time to focus on work. I felt guilty but appreciated her help. To show my gratitude, I provided her with some living expenses through Brian. Yet as Brian's appetite grew, I worried about whether our budget was sufficient. So, I broached the topic with him, suggesting we increase the allowance for his mother. I think we should increase the living expenses we give to your mom, I said, especially considering how much you've been eating lately and she's been doing all the cooking and cleaning. Brian seemed hesitant but eventually agreed, sharing my sentiment about showing appreciation tangibly. As I nodded in approval, little did I know that life was about to take an unexpected turn. Just a short while later, I found myself in a severe accident after colliding with a bike at an intersection. I found myself hospitalized for 2 weeks due to a fractured bone. On the first day, my husband brought me some essentials. Are you okay? It looks painful. I'll let my mom know, he said. That would be great, thanks, I replied. In my shared hospital room, I couldn't make calls, so I asked my husband to inform his mother that I'd contact her once I was able to move. Sure, I got it, he cheerfully responded before heading home. A week went by, and neither my husband nor my mother-in-law showed up. Despite my expectations, there was no contact from either of them. Concern gnawed at me, but I reassured myself, thinking it was just my husband being his usual forgetful self. Then, I tried calling. My husband didn't answer, which I chalked up to him being busy at work. Next, I rang my mother-in-law. Hi, mother-in-law. You must have heard from Brian, but I'll be in the hospital for another week, so I'll need some fresh clothes, I said. Hospitalized? What happened? An injury? Illness? Her flustered response made me uneasy. As I pondered, I realized she hadn't been informed. But why? If my husband forgot, she would have noticed my absence and called me immediately. Minutes later, she arrived, visibly exhausted. She explained Brian's absence, mentioning a sudden 2-week business trip. Thank you for coming, mother-in-law. What did you hear from Brian? I asked. He said he was going on a business trip for 2 weeks. It was sudden, she replied. That's when it hit me. Brian, an illustrator who preferred working from home, planned a sudden business trip. It didn't add up. Unless something significant arose, he wouldn't leave, even for local meetings. My mind raced with possibilities, including the unsettling thought that he might be cheating on me. I know for a fact that our company doesn't arrange meetings requiring business trips. How? Well, it's simple. I work there too, as an administrative staff member. Are you okay? You look pale. Are you feeling unwell? My mother-in-law asked, concern etched on her face. Our company wouldn't send Brian on a business trip. That's the job of the sales team. I'm an admin, so I don't go on business trips either, I explained, watching her reaction. Her puzzled expression spoke volumes. In other words, Brian lied. It had been a week since his unexplained absence and there was no official notification. I couldn't help but wonder where he really was. He left his injured wife in the hospital and lied to me. Did Brian tell you where he was going on business? I inquired. Come to think of it, he mentioned staying in a hotel in Miami arranged by the company, my mother-in-law replied, pulling up the hotel's website on her smartphone. As I glanced at the screen, my heart sank. It was the same hotel where we celebrated our wedding anniversary, a place far too extravagant for a company-funded trip. A throbbing headache began to surface, fueled by the realization of Brian's sloppy alibi. Mother-in-law, this is difficult to say, but Brian might be cheating, I confessed. What? Brian? Her disbelief echoed in the room. But this does seem suspicious, she conceded, her expression shifting. Isn't this the hotel? Hold on, let's confirm if he's really there, she suggested, disappearing for a moment. After what felt like an eternity, she returned, a smirk playing on her lips. They said they'll check it out for me first. We need to verify the facts, she announced. As we waited, about 10 anxious minutes passed by. When I received a call from my mother-in-law, the news was shocking. Brian, my husband, seemed to be spending the night at that hotel, and with another woman, no less. Despite the strict policies against such actions, the circumstances seemed to warrant an exception, my mother-in-law explained. She even disclosed the name of the woman Brian was with. I was taken aback when I heard the name. I knew her. She was actually a friend of mine, my coworker and friend Jessica, who worked in the same department as Brian. She had even been present at our wedding, delivering a speech. The revelation left my mother-in-law equally astonished. Furious, her face flushed bright red, my mother-in-law was ready to confront Brian then and there. However, I urged caution, suggesting we gather solid evidence first. We decided to hire a private detective. After that, I'm filing for divorce. I can't tolerate a man who cheats with my friend. I plan to seek alimony, so I apologize for any inconvenience this may cause you, mother-in-law, I explained. Don't worry about it. I'll give that idiot son of mine a piece of my mind. How dare he betray such a good wife? When he comes back, he'll get a thrashing, my mother-in-law declared angrily, her words offering me some solace. Feeling somewhat uplifted by her support, I began searching for a private detective. A relative of my mother-in-law recommended a reputable detective agency, and I promptly hired them. When I received the report, I couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that my friend Jessica had been posing as Brian's wife while they were away on location, 3 days before my scheduled discharge from the hospital. I dialed Brian's number, keeping it a secret that my mother-in-law was aware of the situation. How are you feeling? I inquired. I'm sorry, I've been too busy to visit. I'll definitely pick you up on your discharge day. Do you need anything? He responded. No, I'm fine. Sorry for bothering you while you're so busy. Apparently, my recovery is taking longer, so my discharge date has been extended. I'm just calling to let you know. I'm borrowing things like pajamas from the hospital, so no need to worry. Looks like I'll be discharged a week from now, I explained. Sorry for not being able to support you while you're so busy. Oh, could you withdraw money for the hospital bills? I don't have any cash on hand, so could you do it on my discharge day? I requested. I see, that sounds tough. All right, I should be done with my delivery in a week, so I'll go to the bank before picking you up. My mom's been worried too. She's caught a cold and feels bad for not being able to visit you. Brian lied effortlessly. Suppressing a laugh at his fabrications, I replied, Oh, is that so? Please tell mother-in-law to take care. Did you manage to inform the office? Thank you. Did they say anything about allowances? He asked, trying to keep the conversation casual. They did. I'll take care of the procedures. You just rest and recover. Hope you get well soon. All right, thank you. See you in a week then, I replied, ending the call. Already aware of Brian's deception, I had confirmed with the office before his call. Apparently, he had informed them that he was going on a trip and applied for my leave. As a result, my boss inquired about the trip and my well-being. After explaining my situation, my boss decided to visit the hospital immediately. Not only my boss but also the HR department came, revealing that I was entitled to sick leave benefits. It was then revealed that Brian had been out of touch for about a week, and he was also behind on his deadlines. The same was true for his mistress, who they couldn't reach either. This revelation shed light on a situation that had been ongoing for the past 6 months, finally coming to a head, prompting them to come and talk to me. I informed my bosses that I preferred they didn't mention the situation to Brian or his mistress until a week later. After that, they were free to impose any necessary punishment. Following the plan, I was discharged from the hospital. It appeared that Brian had submitted another application for my paid leave. His mother, my mother-in-law, received a call from him, stating that his business trip was extended. Despite my extended hospital stay due to my illness, he was prolonging his vacation with his mistress. It became evident that there was no love left for me, leaving me feeling saddened. Deciding to take my paid leave as initially planned, my boss assured me to take all the time I needed until Brian returned. My mother-in-law and I prepared ourselves to confront him. The day before I intended to inform Brian about my discharge from the hospital, I called him. Hello, how's your mother doing? I inquired. I'm feeling good and I got discharged today. It was sudden, so don't worry about picking me up. I can pay with my credit card, he replied. You're working today, right, Brian? I pressed. Yeah, I have a meeting soon and another one tonight, so I won't be home until late. Sorry, he said. That's fine, don't worry about it. I'll take a taxi home, I assured him. Suppressing a laugh at the background noise of a shopping center announcement during his call, I calmly hung up the phone and activated the voice recorder. I had received word from the detective that Brian planned to go shopping today, so I deliberately called him during that time. Upon checking the voice recorder, Brian's voice and the background announcement were distinctly captured. Apparently, Brian had contacted my mother-in-law, claiming he was on vacation with a friend. He insisted it was a working vacation, a sort of half-truth, and mentioned I had given my approval, omitting the details of my hospitalizations to spare her worry. Brian's absurd excuses left me chuckling. According to the detective, Brian had boarded a late-night flight back. My mother-in-law and I laid out all the evidence, awaiting Brian's return. However, Brian called me with a different story. Sorry, the meeting ran late, and I missed the last train. I'll be back on the first train tomorrow, he said. Is that so? That's tough. Got it. Sorry, I can't pick you up, I replied calmly before ending the call. After indulging in a 3-week affair trip, it seemed Brian still couldn't get enough. My mother-in-law was furious, but I found that my love for Brian had vanished entirely, allowing me to maintain composure during our discussion. The next day, Brian returned home looking exhausted, laden with souvenirs. You went on a trip, I stated flatly. I didn't hear about that, I said, puzzled. Ha, didn't I tell you? Sorry, my bad. I got friendly with a client, and they invited me. Business relationships matter, right? Brian explained casually as he handed me a bag and followed me to the living room. I'm home. Hey, what's up with you, Mom? You look scary, Brian said, grinning as he plopped down onto a chair. He seemed to believe his mother was on his side. However, as soon as he saw the documents laid out on the table, his face drained of color. Sitting next to my mother-in-law, I pointed at a photo. Oh yes, you seem to have had quite the fun on your trip with Jessica, leaving your injured wife for 3 weeks. Were you in a honeymoon mood? I asked pointedly. What? What's this, Carol? Stop fooling around, Brian stammered, his face contorting in disbelief. Unfortunately, it wasn't a joke. I presented evidence from a private detective. You were pretty careless, weren't you? Your dinner conversations were totally bugged. Staying at a hotel run by our relatives, you must have thought you wouldn't get caught. Brian's face turned even more shocked as he looked at his mother for help. Mom, it was a lapse in judgment, he tried to explain. A lapse in judgment that lasted 3 weeks seems a bit too long, don't you think? His mother interjected with a cheerful smile. Brian, who had been hoping for help, was stunned. Here, these are documents for a claim for damages and a divorce application. Fill it out now, I instructed firmly. Damages? Divorce? Carol, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. The one I truly love is you. Can't you forgive me? Let's start over, Brian pleaded. In response, I pressed a button on my phone, and the voices of Brian and Jessica flowed out. It was a conversation recorded by the detective, hinting at a divorce with me and a remarriage with Jessica. Brian's face turned even paler. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. I didn't mean it, Brian mumbled, looking desperate. I couldn't care less, really, I replied, handing him the documents and urging him to write. Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any damages. Well, that's what happens when you splurge like that. Where did all that money come from anyway? I asked pointedly. Brian mumbled something incoherent, and I had a bad feeling about it. You didn't by chance use the living expenses, did you? I have been giving you money to pass on to mother-in-law. Did you? You've been passing it on to her, right? I asked Brian, expecting confirmation. However, the response I got wasn't from Brian, but from mother-in-law herself. Living expenses? What are you talking about? I've never received anything like that, she said, seeming genuinely unaware. Confused, I turned to Brian. Hey, what's going on here? Explain it properly, I demanded. Mother-in-law, and I confronted Brian, who seemed to shrink under our scrutiny. I'm sorry, the living expenses, I used them for our dates, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I felt my already icy affection for Brian grow even colder. He had spent the almost $2,000 I had been giving him every month, all of it. I told you that money was for groceries, utilities, and to thank mother-in-law. That money was mine in the first place, I reminded him, my voice tinged with disappointment. I'm sorry, my salary alone wasn't enough, Brian offered weakly, but it was clear what wasn't enough. The designer items Jessica had. Surely, there must have been gifts from Brian. I swiftly raised my hand to reprimand him, but it was stopped by mother-in-law. Brian watched hopefully, still thinking mother-in-law was on his side. You can't, Carol. If you lay a hand, it'll be to your disadvantage, mother-in-law warned before turning to face Brian. Then, with calm and monotone demeanor, mother-in-law delivered her verdict. I've always thought the sillier the child, the cuter. I've spoiled you too much. Even with the bias, you grew up kind, and your father and I were so happy when you got such a good wife. But now, I'm cutting ties with you. Brian, stunned, tried to protest, but Mom, you're joking, right? Mother-in-law slapped away Brian's pleading hand and handed him a document containing a clause renouncing inheritance. Brian widened his eyes in disbelief, muttering, I can't believe it. It doesn't matter if you can't believe it. It's all true, mother-in-law stated firmly. Dejected and seemingly out of arguments, Brian signed all the documents presented. Afterwards, mother-in-law kicked Brian out. He had apparently been misusing company entertainment expenses and was claimed for reimbursement by the company. Brian ended up living in an apartment without a bath, forced into a poor lifestyle after paying alimony and facing reimbursement claims. I claimed alimony from his mistress, Jessica, who, as it turned out, was married. Her husband was away on business, so I contacted him through social media and claimed alimony. As a result, Jessica avoided divorce but had to quit her job, forced to live with her husband's family in a rural area without internet connection, or she was made to work from dawn till dusk. Having lost my parents early, I ended up being adopted by mother-in-law. Initially reluctant because of Brian's infidelity, mother-in-law eventually accepted, and we sold the house, buying a new one just for the two of us. I want to take good care of mother-in-law until the end.
My name is Madison. I'm 24 years old, and I live in Austin, Texas. A few months ago, I graduated from a tech university and landed my first full-time job as a software developer at a startup downtown. It should have been the beginning of an exciting new chapter, a fresh start. But life rarely sticks to the script. Instead of celebrating, I found myself standing in front of my own house, my mother's house, with a suitcase in one hand and a key in the other that no longer fit the lock. I still remember the chill that ran down my spine when I first turned the key, and it didn't budge. At first, I thought I was just tired. The sun was bright, and I'd spent half the day traveling back from out of state. Maybe I was using the wrong key, or maybe the lock was stiff. I tried again, jiggling it, hoping the door would swing open like it always used to. But nothing happened. That house, the one I grew up in, the one my mom, Elise, had worked so hard for, suddenly felt foreign. Mom had been a real estate agent, successful, independent, and full of quiet strength. She bought the house on her own long before she met my dad. I remember how proud she was of it. This house is your safety net, she'd tell me. No matter what happens, you'll always have a roof over your head. She was always like that, planning ahead, taking care of everything. Even after she passed, I could still hear her voice echoing in the halls she once walked. She died from a heart attack when I was 19, just weeks before I left for college. One moment she was texting me about what size comforter I needed for my dorm, and the next she was gone. Just like that. It shattered me in a way I still can't fully describe. But she had left a will, detailed, organized, just like her. The house, her savings, all of it was mine. At least that's what I thought. After the funeral, my dad, Greg, showed up with his new family, his wife Tamara and their son, Caleb, who was only 6 back then. They hadn't been around much before that. Greg left us when I was 10, traded his family life for someone else, and never looked back. He never fought for custody, never argued about money. He just left. Cold, clean, and quick. Tamara was a nurse, polite but distant, and Caleb was too young to understand anything. When they moved in after Mom's funeral, it was supposed to be temporary. I didn't question it at the time. I was too broken to care. Greg told me they'd stay just for a while, to help me cope, to look after the house while I was away at school. We'll keep the place running, so you don't have to worry about anything, he said. Tamara nodded along, smiling in that polite, practiced way she had. I didn't have the strength to think it through. So I said yes. For 4 years, it all seemed fine. Maybe even good. I visited during holidays and summer breaks. Tamara would cook big dinners and say things like, "Your favorite, chicken Alfredo, right?" Like she'd known me all my life. Caleb would drag me into his room to show me Lego sets or drawings. Even Greg started acting like more of a dad again, asking about my classes, my projects, my plans. We started having weekly phone calls. They kept up the house, or so it seemed. Tamara even sent photos of new curtains or flowers she'd planted, always signing off with, "Hope you're proud of how we're keeping it up." It felt like maybe we were building something, a weird, patchwork kind of family. Not perfect, but it worked. But now, standing at that locked front door, something didn't feel right. I knocked hard. After a few seconds, Tamara opened the door, wearing an apron and dusted with flour like she'd been baking. Her expression dropped the moment she saw me. "Madison? What are you doing here?" she asked, voice tight with surprise. I wheeled my suitcase inside, my stomach twisting. "I live here," I said slowly. "I graduated last week, remember? I told Dad I was coming home." Inside, Greg was sitting in the living room, tablet in hand. Caleb was sprawled on the couch, his phone in front of his face. Both of them looked just as shocked. I glanced around. The furniture was mostly the same, but something was different. Subtle changes in decor, pictures I didn't recognize, a faint vanilla scent instead of Mom's favorite lavender. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a place I was visiting. Greg stood up, rubbing his neck, that nervous tick he always had when something was wrong. "About the locks," he started. I changed them last month. Just a precaution. There were some break-ins nearby." I stared at him. "You didn't think to mention that? Or send me a new key?" "We weren't expecting you this soon," Tamara cut in, folding her arms. She wasn't smiling anymore. "You said you'd come later in the summer." "No," I said. "I told you both. I start work next week." Greg cleared his throat. "Can we talk in the office?" He led me into what used to be Mom's office, her books still on the shelves, her framed certificates still on the wall. He shut the door behind us and didn't speak for a moment. "I need to tell you something," he said finally, not meeting my eyes. "Tamara, she thinks this house is mine. That I gave it to your mom when we were married, and after she died, it reverted to me." I blinked.
"What?"
"You know that's not true." "I know," he said quickly. "But I never told her. I didn't want to cause problems. I thought I'd tell her eventually. But then one thing led to another, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For 4 years, they had lived here under my roof. Tamara thought she owned the place. Greg had lied to her, to me, to himself. "I have to tell her," I said. "Please, Mads," he said, stepping forward. "Just give me a little time. I'll talk to her. I just don't want to ruin everything." I looked at him, at the man who left me and my mom like we were nothing. And now he was asking for time to protect his new family? He handed me a set of keys.
"Here."
I had spares made. My hand closed around the cold metal. My whole world tilted. Nothing about this was okay. But I nodded anyway.
"Fine."
"A few weeks. But you fix this." I walked out of the office and back into the house, my house, and it felt more like enemy territory than home. I could already feel the shift. I just didn't know how much worse it would get. I tried to pretend things were fine, at least for the first few days. I told myself I could live with a little awkwardness. After all, it was just temporary. Greg would talk to Tamara, clear things up, and we could all move forward. I didn't want drama. I just wanted to settle into my new job and figure out how to live in a house that didn't feel like mine anymore, even though it was. But things weren't fine. Not even close. The change in Tamara was almost immediate. Her politeness vanished, replaced by an icy stiffness that filled every corner of the house. She stopped greeting me in the mornings. Instead, she'd sigh when I walked into a room, like I was a guest who had overstayed her welcome. She stopped making coffee, even though she knew I loved it, and if I left a mug in the sink, she'd make a loud show of washing it, muttering something about grown adults not cleaning up after themselves. Caleb changed too. He used to run to me when I came home on breaks, always eager to tell me what was new in school or show me his latest video game obsession. Now he barely looked up when I entered the room. He'd whisper to Tamara when I was around, then giggle like I was some unwanted joke in the background of their perfect little family. One night, while we were sitting around the dinner table, the shift became impossible to ignore. Tamara set 3 plates on the table, exactly 3. Hers, Greg's, and Caleb's. I stood in the doorway, confused. "Oh," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "I didn't know if you'd be eating with us." I stared at her. "Why wouldn't I be?" She shrugged. "Just assumed you'd be going out with friends or something." I didn't want to waste food. Greg kept his eyes on his plate, cutting into his chicken like it was suddenly the most interesting thing in the world. I felt like I was watching a play where everyone knew their lines, except me. Later that night, I overheard Tamara on the phone. She was talking to someone, her sister, I think, and her voice carried easily through the vent. "Madison's still here," she said. "It's like she thinks this is her place. I swear if she doesn't move out soon." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. I started spending less time at home. I'd take long walks around the neighborhood or grab coffee and sit in my car just to have a moment of peace. I started visiting old high school friends like Kelsey and David, both of whom still lived in town. With them, I could laugh and relax, even if only for a little while. But every time I came back to the house, it was like stepping into enemy territory. The worst part wasn't even Tamara. It was Greg. He didn't say much. He never yelled or snapped. But his silence was louder than any outburst. He let Tamara treat me like I was intruding. He let her erase the parts of the house that still felt like Mom, replacing her floral curtains with dull gray ones, moving her favorite armchair into the garage, and even suggesting we repaint the living room. I overheard her one day saying, "It's time to make this house ours." And Greg just agreed. That same evening, while I was making myself a sandwich, Tamara came into the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, and looked at me like she was preparing for a negotiation. "I think it's time you started looking for your own place," she said, casual like she was discussing the weather. I blinked. "I just started my job. I'm still getting settled." "You're 24, Madison," she replied. "You should be living independently, not clinging to your father's house." I set my knife down slowly. "This isn't my father's house." She tilted her head, like I'd said something ridiculous. "Oh, please. Greg's name is on everything. He took care of the place when your mother passed. You think a 19-year-old inherited a house like this?" I didn't answer. I just walked away because anything I said would have turned into a fight. And I wasn't ready for that yet. But something in me had started to shift. A quiet rage that had been building since the day I returned. It grew stronger every time Tamara moved one of Mom's things, every time Caleb called me that girl on the phone, and every time Greg sat there and did nothing. 2 weeks into my job, I came home from work on a Saturday morning and immediately noticed something was wrong. The house was too quiet. No TV, no cooking noises, no Caleb's music blasting from his room. I called out, but no one answered. I checked the bedrooms. Empty. The driveway was clear. No car. I pulled out my phone and tried calling Greg. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I called Tamara. She answered on the 4th ring, just as I was about to hang up. "What do you want?" she snapped. I could hear music in the background, beachy, upbeat, with the sound of waves crashing nearby. "Where are you guys?" I asked, stunned. She laughed. "We're in Hawaii. Didn't Greg tell you?"
No, he didn't.
"Well, that's awkward. We figured you'd be fine holding down the fort. Thought it'd be nice to get away, just the 3 of us." Her voice turned sharper. "Honestly, Madison, this situation has gone on long enough. You're freeloading, whether you admit it or not. You're not a child anymore. It's not your job to cling to the past just because you can't build a future." I gripped the phone so tightly I thought it might crack. "This is my house," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Keep telling yourself that," she said and hung up. That was the moment something snapped. I sat down on the edge of the couch, Mom's old couch, and looked around at everything that had changed. The curtains, the wall colors, even the smell of the place. It wasn't just that Tamara had tried to take over the house. She'd tried to erase Mom, erase me, and Greg let her. No more waiting. No more hoping he'd do the right thing. I knew what I had to do, and I was done asking for permission. The house felt emptier than ever after that call, but not in the sad, hollow way I might have expected. It was quiet, yes, but the silence was different now. It felt like breathing room.
Space to think.
I stood in the kitchen, still holding my phone, staring at the cupboards Tamara had reorganized, the tacky vase she'd put on the counter, the magnets from places I'd never visited clinging to the fridge. My house had been twisted into something unrecognizable, and I had let it happen. But no more. That same afternoon, I started packing. Not my stuff, theirs. I went room by room, carefully but quickly, boxing up all of Tamara's expensive clothes, Greg's golf gear and Caleb's toys, schoolwork and gaming equipment. I labeled each box clearly, stacking them neatly in the garage. I didn't break anything, didn't throw things out, though I wanted to. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine. Every photo of their vacations, every framed family moment that didn't include me, all of it went into the boxes. I found Mom's favorite lamp shoved in the back of a closet, hidden under a pile of holiday decorations. I brought it back into the living room and set it in its original spot, right next to the couch. I cried for a moment, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in years, I finally felt like Mom's presence was returning. The next morning, I called a locksmith. He arrived within an hour. He was polite, fast, and didn't ask questions. By the time he left, the locks on every door were changed. It cost a lot, nearly everything from my last paycheck, but I didn't care. He handed me a new set of keys, and I held them tight like they were the final piece of armor I hadn't known I needed. Over the next few days, I rearranged the house. Not to how it was before exactly, but to something closer to it. Something closer to mine. I repainted the kitchen, moved Mom's books back to their original shelves in the office, and took down the bland art Tamara had hung over the fireplace. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. When Friday came, I left work feeling steady. Nervous, yes, but steady. I knew they were coming back. I wasn't sure what would happen, but I was ready for it. I pulled into the driveway just as their rental car parked on the curb. Tamara stepped out first, sunglasses still on, her face quickly turning red as she saw me walking up the steps with calm purpose. Greg got out next, his mouth opening slightly as if he was about to speak but couldn't. Caleb stood behind them, quieter than usual, clutching a souvenir bag from the airport. Tamara didn't wait. "What the hell is this?" she shouted. "You locked us out?" I turned around slowly and looked her straight in the eyes.
Yes.
I did. "You can't do that," she barked, storming toward me. "This is our house. You have no right." Greg said nothing. His eyes darted to the front door, to me, then to Tamara. He looked like a man caught between two fires, but unwilling to move from the flames. "No, Tamara," I said, keeping my voice level. "This house has always belonged to me. My mother bought it. She left it to me in her will. You've only been living here because I let you." She scoffed, glancing at Greg. "Tell her she's lying. Greg, say something." But Greg didn't say a word. He just looked down at the pavement. "You knew," I said softly, watching his silence fold in on itself. "You knew the truth, and you still let her believe the lie." Tamara's confidence faltered. She blinked rapidly, her voice cracking. You didn't have to do this. We were a family." "No," I replied. "You treated me like a guest. Like I didn't belong. Like I was a burden in my own home." She stepped closer, her voice suddenly syrupy. "Madison, come on. Don't throw everything away over a misunderstanding.
We can talk about this.
We can figure it out. Let's just go inside." "No," I cut her off. "You're not coming back in." She opened her mouth to protest, but I pointed to the garage. "Your things are there. Everything's packed." Tamara looked like she wanted to scream, and maybe she would have, but Greg placed a hand on her shoulder and shook his head. Caleb stood silently behind them, his face unreadable. They made 3 trips to load the boxes into the car.
No one said anything.
The last box went in just as the sun began to set. Greg walked back to the door one last time, hesitation all over his face. "Madison," he said quietly, "I messed up. I know that. I was trying to protect what I built with them, but I should have protected you." I didn't say anything. "Can we fix this?" he asked, voice breaking. "Please." I shook my head, not out of anger, but out of understanding. Some things break and don't need fixing. They just need to be let go. He nodded slowly. I closed the door behind me, locked it, and leaned against it as they finally drove away. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for years. Finally, I could exhale. After the door shut behind them, I stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet. No yelling. No fake laughter. No footsteps that weren't mine. Just silence, the kind that finally felt peaceful instead of cold. I sat down on the couch, the one my mom had picked out years ago, and stared at the walls I had just repainted. They looked brighter somehow, like the house was breathing again. Like I was. The next morning, I made coffee in a clean kitchen, took it out to the front porch, and watched the sun come up. It felt like the first morning in forever where I wasn't holding my breath. No more hiding. No more pretending. The house felt different now, not haunted or heavy, just mine. Fully, finally mine. That Monday, I went to work like normal. My desk at the startup was still by the window, and the view of downtown Austin hadn't changed, but everything inside me had. I was sharper, more focused. I threw myself into my work, into learning and growing and building something that no one could take away. Rachel, a designer on my team, noticed. "You're glowing lately," she said over lunch one day. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I just smiled. I didn't explain. Greg tried calling that week from a new number. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that started with "Hi, sweetheart," and ended with "Please call me back, I miss you." I deleted it. A few days later, another unknown number popped up. I ignored it too. I knew it was him. He'd had years to speak up, to be honest, to protect me and honor my mother's wishes. He hadn't. He stood by and let someone else tear me down in my own home. Now, I didn't know him anything. I heard through a neighbor that they'd moved to an apartment across town, a small place near a strip mall. Tamara had been complaining about the rent and the noise. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just distance, finally. Inside the house, I kept rebuilding. Not physically, though I did repaint the guest room and swap out some furniture, but emotionally. I took out Mom's old records, the ones I hadn't touched since she passed, and played them while I cooked. I sat on the porch in the evenings, just like she used to, sipping tea and watching the world go by. I planted new roses in the backyard, right beside the garden she'd once kept. She used to say roses were strong because they survived even when ignored. I understood that better now. Sometimes I still think about Caleb. He was just a kid caught in the middle. Maybe one day, when he's older, he'll remember the sister who used to help him build Lego castles and listen to him ramble about superheroes. Maybe he'll reach out. If he does, I'll decide then. For now, I needed distance from all of them. I also think about Tamara, about how quickly she turned cruel when she thought she was losing control. All that warmth she once showed me, the meals, the smiles, the shared holidays, they weren't real. They were performances. And when I stopped playing my part, she couldn't hide it anymore. But the person I think about the most is my mom.
Elise.
The woman who planned ahead, who made sure I was taken care of even when she wasn't around to see it. She knew this might happen, and she put everything in place to protect me. She didn't just leave me a house. She left me strength, a place to return to, a foundation to rebuild my life on when the people who should have cared didn't. And I did rebuild. I'm still rebuilding. But this time, I'm doing it on my terms. Sometimes, people talk about healing like it's soft and gentle. But for me, healing meant setting boundaries. Saying no. Locking doors. Standing up for myself, even when it meant standing alone. It meant understanding that family isn't just blood or who shares a dinner table with you. It's who shows up when it matters. It's who tells the truth when it's hard. It's who sees you fully and doesn't try to take anything from you. Some bridges don't need mending. Some need to burn so you never walk back into the fire again. This house, the one my mom left me, doesn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It feels like a home.
My home.
The floors creak in familiar places. The walls hold memories I've chosen to keep, and the future I'm building here is one I no longer have to share with people who treated me like I didn't belong. I don't pick up Greg's calls anymore. I don't wait for apologies that won't come or conversations that would only reopen wounds I've already closed. I'm not angry. I'm free. And that, more than anything, is the ending I deserve. My stepsister announced she was 4 months pregnant with my fiancé's child, right in the middle of my wedding. My family stood and clapped for them. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked away in silence. 3 months later, I returned with nothing but a smile and handed them a box. Their happiness turned into tears because inside the box was... If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here telling this story, I would have laughed and brushed it off. My life was on track, better than ever, actually. I had just turned 31, was living in downtown Seattle, working as a marketing executive at a firm that appreciated my ideas, and I was engaged to a man I thought I'd spend forever with. Daniel Myers. Smart, soft-spoken, supportive. We met at a tech conference in San Francisco. He was a senior software developer giving a talk on AI ethics. I asked a question during the Q&A, and he found me afterward to continue the discussion. It started with coffee, turned into dinners, long phone calls, and before I knew it, he was in my world like he had always belonged. I still remember the night he proposed. We were on a rooftop overlooking the city skyline, wrapped in a blanket, sipping wine. "I want you, Alyssa. All of you forever," he said, sliding the ring onto my finger. I believed him. I truly did. I said yes through tears and laughter, feeling like the luckiest woman alive. Everything moved quickly after that. We set a date for June and decided on a lakeside wedding. I handled most of the planning. It's just who I am. Organized, detail-focused. Daniel helped when he could, though I started noticing he seemed distracted. I chalked it up to work stress. He had just transitioned to a new project and was pulling long hours.
Or so he said.
But looking back, the signs were there. Then there was my family. My relationship with them was always complicated. My mom, Cynthia, remarried when I was 7. Her new husband, Barry, was decent in a basic sense. Never cruel, but never really warm. He had a daughter from a previous relationship, Kayla, who was 5 years younger than me. From the start, it was obvious who the favorite was. Kayla could do no wrong. She could crash cars, drop out of school, burn through their savings to chase an influencer dream, and they'd still call her spirited. Meanwhile, I was the serious one. The one who followed rules, paid my own bills, built my life from scratch. I didn't live for their approval anymore, but that didn't mean it didn't sting. My biological dad, Dr. Victor Grant, lived down in Portland. A retired neurologist with a quiet life and a golden retriever named Max. We talked occasionally. Birthday calls. Holiday texts. He never fought for custody, never came to school plays. But I couldn't hate him. Maybe because, in his quiet way, he always let me know he cared. Maybe because, deep down, I always hoped he'd show up when I really needed him. 3 weeks before the wedding, things started to shift. Daniel became more distant. Less affectionate. He'd go quiet during dinner, avoid eye contact when we discussed vows. "Just tired," he kept saying. "It's the workload." I believed him. Because I wanted to. Kayla, on the other hand, was suddenly around a lot more. She'd never taken much interest in my life before, but now she was showing up to bridal fittings, chiming in with venue advice, even texting Daniel funny memes and random check-ins. I noticed. Of course, I noticed. But I thought no, I hoped I was being paranoid. The night before the wedding, we hosted a small rehearsal dinner at the venue. My mom beamed as if everything was perfect. Barry gave a toast about new beginnings. Daniel smiled politely, but barely touched his food. Kayla was glowing, overly chatty, loud, sipping mocktails with a strange smugness in her eyes. Later, when I pulled Daniel aside, I asked, "Are you okay?" He gave me a tired smile. "Just nerves. Everything's going to be fine." I kissed his cheek and whispered, "I can't wait to marry you." The next day, I woke up early. My best friend helped me into my dress. My makeup was flawless. The sun was shining, the lake sparkled. The guests had all arrived. I stood behind the ceremony doors, bouquet in hand, heart pounding, not with fear, but joy. Then the doors opened. I stepped forward, music playing, all eyes on me, and then chaos. Before I reached the altar, a voice cut through the music. "Stop. Stop the wedding." I froze. Everyone turned. It was Kayla, standing at the back, her face flushed, breathing heavy. "I'm pregnant," she shouted, "with Daniel's baby." For a moment, no one moved. The world around me stood still. Then voices, gasps, Daniel calling her name. I looked at him. "Tell me she's lying." He wouldn't meet my eyes. Silence. The pain hit me like a truck. "You cheated on me with her?" I whispered. He tried to say something, but the words didn't matter. "Not anymore." Guests murmured. Cameras clicked. My mother ran to Kayla. Barry followed, looking concerned. And then Cynthia turned to me, her voice steady. "Alyssa, maybe we can fix this. Daniel's willing to take responsibility. Don't throw everything away." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Responsibility? He betrayed me with my sister. "She's not your sister," Cynthia said coldly. "You're not even acting like family." That was the moment I realized I was utterly alone. I left, ripped off my veil, tore through the crowd, and didn't look back. That night, I drove to Portland. I hadn't called ahead. I just showed up at my dad's door with mascara-streaked cheeks and shaking hands. He opened the door, saw my face, and pulled me into a hug. "Come in," he said softly. "Whatever happened, we'll figure it out." And I broke. Not just cried, I broke. Because I thought I had lost everything. But what I didn't know then was that I had just begun. The first few days in Portland felt like a blur. I barely spoke, barely ate. My dad didn't push. He made me tea, left books by the bedside, and simply existed in the background like a calm anchor. I stayed in the guest room, the same one I used as a teenager during summer visits. Funny how a place could hold so many versions of you. On the fourth night, he made pasta and we finally talked. I told him everything about Daniel, Kayla, the wedding, my mother's reaction. Every word felt heavier than the last. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he just said, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. You didn't deserve any of that." I nodded, swallowing back the ache. "I don't even know who I am anymore." "You're still you," he said. "They didn't take that from you. You're just hurt. But hurt heals." He was right. And after 2 weeks of hiding, something in me stirred. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was anger. But I was done being broken. I needed to rebuild. That's when Dad mentioned Lincoln and Marks. A friend of his from med school, now married to the founder, had mentioned they were hiring. A digital branding firm, fast-growing, competitive. He said, "You're smart, talented. Go show them." I hesitated. "You think they'd even look at me?" "I'd hire you in a heartbeat," he smiled. "Let them see what I see." I sent in my resume the next day, still half-doubting myself. But a week later, I got the call. The interview went smoothly, clean, sharp questions about market trends, client strategy. I felt alive again talking about the work I loved. Within days, they offered me the position. I said yes. The office was downtown, all glass and chrome, with a view of the river. My team was a mix of smart, focused people. I kept my head down, worked hard, avoided personal conversations. They respected that. Within a month, I was leading 2 major projects. I started to feel like myself again. Until the morning Daniel walked in. I had just finished my coffee when I heard the voice I hadn't expected to hear again. "Hey everyone, I'm Daniel Myers. I'll be joining as the new app development lead." My stomach dropped. I looked up and locked eyes with him. He froze for half a second, clearly just as surprised. I wanted to scream or disappear, but I didn't. I nodded, said, "Welcome to the team," and went back to my screen. That day, I worked in a fog. I couldn't believe it. Out of all companies in Seattle, he had to land at mine? Had the universe not humiliated me enough? In the days that followed, I avoided him. I kept things professional, brief, distant. I wasn't going to let him see me unravel again. But of course, he couldn't leave it alone. One afternoon, in the break room, he cornered me. "Alyssa, can we talk?" he asked. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied flatly.
Please.
"Just hear me out." I stood still, arms crossed.
Fine.
"Talk." He looked tired, nervous. "I didn't mean to hurt you. What happened, it wasn't planned. Kayla was vulnerable. We both made a mistake." I scoffed. "You cheated on your fiancée with her stepsister. That's not a mistake. That's a decision."
He sighed.
"She lost the baby, Alyssa. She was devastated. And now she can't have kids again. That stress, that day, it broke her. And you." "Stop."
My voice was ice.
"Are you seriously blaming me for that? You ran. You left her in pieces." I felt something inside me snap. "You're unbelievable. You lied. You betrayed me. And now you're trying to make me feel guilty." He didn't reply, just stared at me, guilt and bitterness written all over his face. I walked away, shaking, fuming. That night, I told my dad everything. Over dinner, in low, tight words. He listened, his fork frozen midair. When I finished, he leaned back and took a long breath. "There's something I need to tell you."
What?
He looked almost ashamed. "Kayla didn't have a miscarriage." I blinked. "What?" "She came to see me after the wedding. Told me she'd had an abortion. That the baby wasn't Daniel's." I sat there stunned. She said it was someone she met at a bar. A fling. She didn't want the baby, so she ended it. I didn't say anything then, because I thought it wasn't my place. But now she's blaming me for something that never happened. I finished for him. He nodded, regret in his eyes. I felt sick. All this time, I had carried guilt. Thought maybe, just maybe, I'd pushed her too hard.
But it was all a lie.
She manipulated everyone. Lied to Daniel. Lied to our family. Lied to me. I stood up from the table. "I need air." Outside, I paced the porch, heart pounding. Betrayal layered on betrayal. But this time, I wasn't going to walk away. She wanted drama? I'd give her the truth. And I'd make sure the world heard it. I just needed proof. Something she couldn't deny. And that's when I thought of hiring someone. Someone who could get close to Kayla without raising suspicion. Someone who could catch her being her true self. Because if I'd learned anything by now, it was this. People always expose themselves when they think no one's watching. And Kayla? She loved an audience. The next morning, I began looking for someone who could do the job quietly, without drama, without traces. I didn't want confrontation. I wanted undeniable truth. It didn't take long to find her. Jasmine Cole, private investigator, mid-40s, ex-journalist, now specialized in personal surveillance and truth extraction. Her online reviews read like spy novels, and her reputation was solid. I sent a brief message, and within a few hours, we met at a quiet diner in Portland. She sat across from me in jeans and a leather jacket, notebook in hand. "So, Alyssa," she said, her tone calm but curious. "What are we after?" I explained everything. Daniel, Kayla, the fake miscarriage, the abortion, the lies, and how Kayla was still playing the victim card while destroying what little was left of my reputation. Jasmine didn't flinch. She just listened. "She still lives in Seattle?" she asked. I nodded. "Same condo. Still spends most weekends partying downtown. She's not hard to find." "And how close are you now?" "Not at all. Haven't spoken since the wedding."
Perfect, she said.
"That means she won't see me coming." I asked her how she planned to approach it. She likes attention, right? Instagram, TikTok, the influencer scene? I'll blend in. I'll meet her at a bar she frequents, strike up a conversation. The rest is just patience. People like that always say too much when they feel safe. Her confidence gave me a strange kind of comfort. I nodded. Whatever it takes. I just want the truth. On record. Jasmine smiled. Then let's get it. She left for Seattle the next morning. The following days were slow torture. I checked my phone every few minutes, jumped at every buzz. I couldn't focus at work. Daniel kept his distance, though I could feel him watching me sometimes. I didn't acknowledge it. He wasn't even worth a glance anymore. On the fifth night, Jasmine finally called. I got it, she said simply. I froze. Got what? Everything. I met her that evening in a quiet parking lot near the waterfront. She handed me a flash drive and a pair of earbuds. She went on a rant. Wine and ego make people careless. Just listen. I plugged it in and pressed play. Kayla's voice came through, slurred and laughing. I told everyone it was Daniel's.
Please.
That man's so gullible. He actually cried. Thought he'd be a dad. But it wasn't even his, it was that bartender from Capitol Hill.
Ugh.
I wasn't about to raise his baby. You know. There was more. Racist slurs. Mocking laughter. She went on about how everyone believed her because she played the victim better than Alyssa ever could. She bragged about ruining my life, how pathetic I looked in my wedding dress, and how she owned the family now. I took out the earbuds slowly. My chest burned, not just from rage, but from clarity. There it was. Proof. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. That enough? More than enough, I said. Want me to keep going?
No.
This is the final blow. I thanked her, paid her, and went home. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared out the window at the city lights and planned. I waited 3 more days. I needed it to be perfect. I invited both Kayla and Daniel to a rooftop cafe downtown, somewhere neutral and public. No surprises. Just the truth. Kayla walked in first, wearing oversized sunglasses and a designer jacket, like she was attending a press conference. Daniel showed up minutes later, tense, guarded. They sat across from me at the table. Kayla gave a little fake smile. So? You finally ready to get over it? I leaned back and placed a plain envelope in the center of the table. What's this? Daniel asked. Proof, I said. Go ahead. Kayla reached for it, but I stopped her. Actually, I think Daniel should hear it first. He took out the flash drive and popped it into his phone. I watched his expression change. Curiosity, confusion, and then disbelief. As Kayla's voice filled the air, her smirk faded. She leaned in, eyes wide. You recorded me? No, I said calmly. Someone else did. You made it easy. Daniel stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. You lied.
You lied to me.
You lied about everything. Kayla stammered. Daniel, He didn't wait. He walked away, phone still in hand, shoulders stiff. Kayla turned to me, her face red with fury. You think this makes you smart? You'll regret this. I stared at her without blinking. Maybe. But I'm done being your victim. She stormed off, drawing eyes from nearby tables. I didn't care. I sat there for a while, watching the sunset, feeling the weight lift off my chest. The next morning, I uploaded the audio to an anonymous file and sent it to Lincoln and Mark's HR. By lunchtime, Daniel was pulled into a meeting. Later that week, he was quietly removed from the development lead role and reassigned to a side project with no client contact. I heard through whispers that HR had launched an investigation. As for Kayla, the fallout was swift. Brands she partnered with cut ties. Her influencer deals vanished overnight. Screenshots of her slurs from the recordings started circulating. Her carefully curated online persona collapsed in hours. She tried to delete everything, but it was too late. And me? I got called into the VP's office on Friday. We've been watching you, she said. You've handled everything with professionalism. You kept your head down, did your work. We'd like to promote you, team lead, if you're ready. I said yes. Not because I needed validation, but because I had earned it. That weekend, I walked along the waterfront, coffee in hand, the breeze soft against my skin. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't bracing for the next hit, because it was done. The damage was real. The scars were deep, but I was still standing. And I had the truth. After everything came to light, I expected peace to follow. I thought the silence would feel like freedom, but what came instead was something else. A strange mix of calm and emptiness. For weeks, I kept going to work, doing my job, accepting the congratulations and polite smiles from coworkers who once whispered behind my back. Some even apologized quietly in the hallway, saying they'd had no idea. I just nodded. I didn't need their words. I wasn't doing this for them. Kayla tried to reach out once. A text. Just 5 words. We need to talk. Please. I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. There was nothing left to say. The girl who once strutted through life like the center of the universe had finally been knocked off her pedestal. I didn't need an apology. I didn't want her to cry. I just wanted her out of my life. Daniel left the company a month later. No one said it out loud, but I knew he'd been pushed out. Quietly. Professionally. HR never made a scene, but after that meeting, his days were numbered. Last I heard, he moved to Chicago. Started at a startup with some old friends. He never contacted me again. That was fine. Closure doesn't always need words. It just needs distance. My mom, Cynthia, didn't call. Not once. I think she was embarrassed. Or maybe she still believed Kayla was the victim. That wouldn't surprise me. My whole life, I had tried to earn her approval. I tried to be the responsible one, the one who didn't cause trouble, who brought home awards instead of drama. But when it came down to it, she didn't choose me. Not when it mattered. And once I saw that clearly, it stopped hurting. Barry sent a single email. A strange, short message. Something about being sorry for how things turned out. He never said Kayla lied. Never acknowledged the audio. Just sorry it happened. That was enough for me to know that nothing had changed on their end. They'd rather live in silence than face the truth. But the truth had already done its job. The more time passed, the stronger I felt. My promotion came with more responsibility, more hours, but I didn't mind. I was building something now, something that was mine, untouched by lies or betrayal. I was leading a team, landing big accounts, even mentoring new hires. People looked to me now not just as a coworker, but as a leader. One evening, while walking home, I passed a bookstore and stopped at the window. A journal caught my eye, simple, leather-bound, navy blue. I bought it. That night, I sat on my bed and started writing. Not about Daniel or Kayla. Not about the betrayal. I wrote about me. What I wanted. Where I'd been. Who I was becoming. It wasn't easy. There were still nights when the memories came back. The look on Daniel's face when Kayla made that announcement. The sick twist in my gut when my mother told me to forgive him. The silence of the car ride to Portland. But those moments didn't control me anymore. They were part of the story, not the whole thing. A few months later, my dad and I took a trip. Just the two of us. We drove along the Oregon coast, stopping at little towns, hiking cliffs, eating too much seafood. One night by the fire, I told him how grateful I was. I don't think I ever really said it. I told him, but thank you for taking me in,
For believing me.
He just smiled. I'm sorry I wasn't there more when you were younger. I thought staying out of the way was helping. I nodded. I used to wish you had fought harder.
But now?
I think maybe this moment means more. You showed up when no one else did. He didn't say anything else. He just reached over and held my hand. After we came back, I got a message from a nonprofit in Seattle. They were looking for speakers, women who had overcome personal betrayals, especially from family. Someone had referred me. At first, I hesitated. Why would I reopen all of that in front of strangers? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. My story wasn't just mine anymore. Maybe someone else needed to hear it. So I said yes. The night of the event, I stood in front of a small crowd. Not too many people. Just enough to make it real. I told them everything. Not in detail, not with names. Just the truth. about believing in someone and being betrayed, about being abandoned by your own family, about choosing not to stay broken. When I finished, there was silence. Then applause. A woman in the front row had tears in her eyes. Later, she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you. I needed that." That's when I realized something. Revenge felt good. But healing? Healing was better. What Kayla and Daniel did to me, what my family allowed, could have destroyed me. But it didn't. Instead, it made space. Space for better people. For purpose.
For peace.
Now, when I walk past the mirror, I don't see the woman who ran from a broken wedding. I see the woman who stood back up, who turned silence into power. Seattle's still home. The rain still falls. The city still hums. But I'm different now. Stronger. Sharper. I thought losing everything would be the end. But it was the beginning.
What in the world is this? As I walked into my room, the sight that greeted me was utterly shocking. My room was empty, as if nothing had ever been there. Essential equipment for my job, books placed on my desk, and even the clothes and bags stored in my closet had all vanished. In this unbelievable situation, I could only stand there dumbfounded. But then I heard laughter from behind me. Turning around, I saw my sister-in-law laughing as if enjoying the situation. "Look, your room is so tidy and clean now," she said. I asked her, "Kate, what on earth is going on here?" "Go look at the garden," she suggested. Confused, I looked out the window to the garden, where I saw my belongings messily abandoned and soaked. I was speechless and overwhelmed with anger at this shocking situation. Yet, despite my anger, my sister-in-law continued to criticize me. "Aren't you ashamed of still living at your parents' house without getting married? You should become independent soon." Unable to tolerate her behavior any longer, I resolved to move forward with a plan I had been considering for a while. I am Anna Holmes, 30 years old. I work as a freelance web developer. After graduating from university, I worked in the real estate industry, but my interest in web development began when I was inspired by a colleague skilled in programming. However, at that time, I had no knowledge of web development or programming, making a career change difficult. With my family's support, I quit my job at 24 and enrolled in a programming school. I had little savings, so I moved back with my parents, who helped me with tuition, and I managed to graduate. After graduating, I immediately started my career as an independent programmer. In the beginning, I only had a few small projects, and my income was unstable. But after a year, my work was recognized, and I received more projects. Over time, I became a well-known programmer, able to support myself. I am deeply grateful for my family's support, which has allowed me to be where I am today. However, a few years after graduating, my father passed away from an illness, and months later, my mother injured her leg in a shopping accident, making it difficult for her to move around. After my father's death, my mother, living alone, found it challenging to even shop at the local supermarket and needed care. Knowing this, I decided to return home. I took on the responsibility of caring for my mother daily, paying for a helper, and covering living expenses. I made this decision to repay my parents for supporting my dream and to show my filial piety. Then, one day, my brother, who had married Kate 3 years earlier, suddenly returned home with his belongings. Surprised, I asked, "Brother, why are you here so suddenly?" Without any warning, he had crossed the threshold of our family home. "Actually, the company I was working for went bankrupt," he began to explain quietly. Shocked, I could hardly believe it. My brother, who had always shown exceptional talent since childhood, graduated from a top university and worked for a well-known company, earning high social regard. Proud of him, I had always boasted about him to others, but the news of his company's bankruptcy filled me with deep concern. Having lost his job and unable to afford the rent for his previous apartment, my brother decided to stay at our family home until he found new employment. While he apologized, looking downcast, Kate showed a slight attitude of discontent. My mother was overjoyed to have my long-absent brother back, and we all warmly welcomed them. With a promise to repay me later, I agreed to temporarily support my brother and his wife's livelihood. While the sudden change was bewildering, it was a moment that made me realize the importance of supporting each other as a family. Although I needed to focus more on my work, I never imagined that living with my brother and his wife, Kate, would significantly change my daily life. Since my brother and his wife returned home, he has been going out for job interviews almost every day, and he is rarely at home during the daytime. For most of the time, my mother spent her days in bed and seldom left her room. While I was immersed in work in my own room, the door slowly opened without any warning. Startled by the sudden opening of the door, I stopped my work and turned toward it. There stood Kate with a displeased expression. Good morning, Kate. What can I do for you? Kate sighed heavily before speaking. What do you mean? What can I do for you? Where is my breakfast? I replied, breakfast. It's prepared in the living room. I prepare breakfast daily, considering my mother's health. How can you expect me to eat something so tasteless? Make it again, quickly. I was astonished by her unreasonable demand as she barged into my room without even knocking. Despite being my sister-in-law, I couldn't let her say anything she wanted and firmly responded to her demand. I am currently working and do not have the time to cook. If the meal I prepared does not suit your taste, feel free to use the kitchen yourself. This response seemed to offend Kate, who became even more confrontational. Why should I, a guest, have to cook, and your so-called work is just playing on the computer? I felt quite angry at her dismissive view of my profession. Standing up, I approached Kate with a stern look. What? It seemed that Kate felt intimidated by my angered demeanor. Please stop. As I've said, I am working. If you're dissatisfied with your meal, prepare it yourself. After stating this, I escorted Kate out of the room, pushing her out as she protested, What do you mean by this? And locked the door. What is going on? I was focused on my work, needing to earn a living for my brother's family when this disturbance occurred. With growing concerns about our future, I returned to my work. Later, Kate ceased her overt selfishness but began using my personal items without permission. From skincare products on the vanity to makeup items and hair treatments in the bathroom, she deliberately chose to use mine. While I'm not particularly obsessive about cleanliness, I felt a strong discomfort at her using my belongings, including cosmetics, without permission and repeatedly asked her to refrain. When I say, Kate, you've been using my cosmetics recently without asking, could you please stop? She responded dismissively as if ignoring my request. I'm just using what's on the vanity. If you don't want it used, keep it in your room. Besides, you don't need such cosmetics when you're working from home, right? Angered by Kate's rude response, I realized arguing was futile and decided to keep all my belongings in my room. Yet, Kate began sneaking into my room to use my items when I wasn't around. Her actions escalated, and she started using my cherished bags and clothes without permission. No matter how much I protested, Kate's behavior remained unchanged, leaving me feeling helpless. In this situation, I considered seeking help from my brother, but he was consumed with his efforts to find a new job. Seeing him return home with a face full of disappointment and fatigue after unsuccessful interviews, I couldn't bring myself to add to his worries, so I kept silent. Amid the ongoing stress with Kate, I was suddenly faced with a 2 to 3 day business trip. Feeling responsible for my mother's daily care, I initially wanted to decline the trip. However, the company requesting my presence was a long-term business partner since the beginning of my freelance career, making it difficult to refuse. After sharing my concerns with my mother and brother, they encouraged me, despite my worries. Don't worry, the helper will be here. Focus on your work, my mother assured me, while my brother said, it's just 2 to 3 days. I have interviews, but I'll try to stay home as much as possible. So go ahead without worrying. Encouraged by their words, I decided to go on the 2-night, 3-day business trip. When I returned home with haste, I was greeted by the sight of my bedridden mother and only Kate remaining. On the day I was to return, my brother had an unavoidable job interview with a company. So he had been away since the previous day. I thought Kate was not the type to do housework, merely spending her time at home. So I was surprised when I returned home after stopping by the supermarket. Upon arriving home and temporarily placing my belongings, I proceeded to my room, only to be utterly shocked by what I saw. What in the world is this? My room was empty, as if nothing had ever been there. Essential equipment for my job, books placed on my desk, and even the clothes and bags stored in my closet had all vanished. In this unbelievable situation, I could only stand there dumbfounded. But then I heard laughter from behind me. Turning around, I saw Kate laughing as if enjoying the situation. "Look, your room is so tidy and clean now," she said. I asked her, "Kate, what on earth is going on here?" "Go look at the garden," she suggested. Confused, I looked out the window to the garden, where I saw my belongings messily abandoned and soaked. I was speechless and overwhelmed with anger at this shocking situation. Yet, despite my anger, Kate continued to criticize me. "Aren't you ashamed of still living at your parents' house without getting married? You should become independent soon." Unable to tolerate her harsh words, I reached my breaking point. I decided to move forward with a plan I had been considering. Indeed, it is somewhat embarrassing to still be living at home at my age. "I plan to leave this house next month," I responded to Kate, harboring anger inside. "I'll be happy to see you go. Finally, I'll be free from living with you." Kate could not hide her joy. "The feeling is mutual. Living with you has been stressful, so this is a good outcome for both of us." My words seemed to touch a nerve, and she glared at me, saying, "Get out of here soon," before leaving the room. After she left, I quickly went outside to the garden. My belongings had likely been thrown out there the day before. After last night's rain, they were covered in mud. First, I checked if my computer and other essential work equipment were still functional. Fortunately, all these devices were working correctly, so my work was not affected. I need to think about my living situation next. I had been considering buying a new residence for a while. The current house was aging and not suitable, especially for my mother, who required care. I had planned to move to a new home once my savings reached a certain amount. I had discussed this plan with my mother beforehand, but she was worried and did not see the necessity, not wanting to burden me. However, to repay my mother and escape living with Kate, I contacted the real estate agency I had been considering. Days passed, and when my brother found a new job, I discussed Kate's actions with my mother and brother. They were angry at Kate's behavior and promised to support me. My brother had been critical of Kate's behavior and began considering divorce after this incident. To be honest, I've been fed up with her usual behavior. She didn't try to find a job and kept being selfish. I didn't realize she was capable of something this terrible. I deeply regret overlooking it. My brother expressed his remorse. "There's no need for you to apologize," I reassured him, and he expressed his gratitude. Eventually, our family discussed and decided on the moving plans. All that remained was to set a specific date for the move. One day, while planning the move to our new life, we learned that Kate was planning a trip with her friends. We decided to use this opportunity to move. After seeing Kate off at the door on the day of her trip, we quickly started the moving process. Since we had already sent most of our belongings to the new home, only large furniture and appliances remained. While unpacking at the new house, Kate urgently called my brother's phone. "What should we do?" When my brother asked, I decided to answer the call on his behalf. "Hello." From the other end of the phone, I could feel Kate's intense anger. "What are you doing?" When I got back home, everything was gone. "And why are you answering my husband's phone?" "Where is Tom?" "He is here, but do you need something?" "Need something?" When I got back, everything was gone except for mine. "What is this situation?" "We've moved to a new house as a family," I explained. "What?" Kate was confused and could not grasp the situation. "Kate, you told me to leave the family home, didn't you?" "We just followed your instruction. I only told you to leave, not everyone. But you didn't specify that I should move out alone." Realizing the gravity of her own words, Kate faltered. "I didn't specify alone, but how could you afford a new home?" Tom only recently got a job, so where did the money come from? I covered all the costs myself, I interjected. You might not know, but my current job is quite reputable, and I earn enough to buy a house. Really? But your job is just typing on a keyboard. It may seem like that to you, but actually, my profession provides enough to support the family. Kate truly believed that I was just typing on a keyboard and dependent on the family. Through this conversation, she realized how disadvantageous her position was. Then Kate changed her tone, seemingly asking for help. Anna, I deeply regret my past mistakes. I didn't know you were such an accomplished person. I wish you had told me that from the beginning. I expressed my indignation at her sudden change of heart. Asking for forgiveness now is a joke. What you did, scattering my belongings and all, is unforgivable. You'll fully compensate for everything. I truly regret it. So, can I have your new address first? There's no way I'll tell you that. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore, and just so you know, I'm aware of the affair you've been hiding from my brother. Kate gasped. Indeed, during a conversation with the three of us, my brother told me about Kate's affair. Since returning to the family home, Kate had been in an affair with a former high school classmate, using my cosmetics without permission to go out. The trip she planned on the day of the move was supposedly with her affair partner. Realizing that everything had been exposed, Kate couldn't argue, and silence returned to the other end of the phone. A completed divorce paper is left for you. Please sign it. With those words, I ended the call. Later, our old family home was set for demolition. Kate continued to live there but eventually had to leave due to the demolition. Thus, the couple went through with the divorce. Kate's affair was exposed, and she was faced with a substantial compensation demand, and I was able to claim additional compensation for my belongings. Kate, who had never worked seriously, had no savings to pay the compensation and ultimately had to rely on her own parents, who decided to cut ties with her after hearing from my brother. As a result, Kate was burdened with a huge debt and lived alone in a cheap apartment, juggling multiple part-time jobs. We started our life in the new house as a family of 3, living happily. My mother was delighted that the family was living together under one roof again. Hey, Dina, have you washed these sheets properly? They smell like you, said my father-in-law as he laid on the sheets. If we had lived together, I might have experienced such bizarre scenes every day. Just the thought of it gives me the shivers. The divorce that resulted from this living arrangement marked the start of my new life. I am Dina. I am 60 years old and divorced. Others may think differently, but I believe that at 60, I still have a lot ahead of me. I taught myself how to use a computer, which was once a challenge, by reading books. I always want to be an enthusiastic woman who doesn't give up because of her age. Compete with the younger ones? No, I am still young, actually. But even I have faced tough times. The incident happened when I finally finished paying off the house mortgage. This was over a decade ago. I had contributed to the purchase of the house with my husband, Jim, in our 20s, and we had just finished paying off the mortgage. Jim said, "Maybe we should consider living together?" What do you mean by that? You know what I mean. Living with my parents. I've said this many times, but it's a bit difficult. Why? To be honest, I don't think your mother likes me very much. Living together would be hard for both her and me. The way things are now is best. That might be true, but we won't know unless we try, said Jim. Once we start living together, it won't be easy to stop, will it? You always seem to shy away from challenges. Challenges, huh? Ever since we got married, he often suggested living with his parents. Before marriage, he was firmly against cohabitation, so I felt relieved. But after marriage, he gradually started saying living together might be nice. It's like a scam. I later found out that his mother often told him, "What will you do when we get old?" It's worrying. Before I knew it, Jim started feeling a strange sense of duty, thinking living together is my responsibility as a son, a way of loving my parents. I wish he'd feel that not living together is also his responsibility as a husband. I think it's important to care for his parents, but he keeps insisting on living together even though I don't get along with his mother. Holding back my emotions, my relationship with my thoughtless husband gradually worsened, but he seemed completely unconcerned. As the remaining amount on our house mortgage decreased, his suggestions for living together with his parents intensified. I had ignored his words until then, but this was a warning sign. Feeling an impending sense of crisis, one day, I went to the door at the sound of the intercom and was shocked when I opened it. "Hello," said my smiling mother-in-law and father-in-law standing there. It was 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. The sunlight illuminated their smiling faces. It was like a holy scene, but that couldn't be so. Stunned by their sudden visit, I stood there frozen. Then Jim appeared behind me, welcomed them with "welcome back," and led them inside. "Wait, welcome back? What's going on? Aren't visitors supposed to say excuse us, and the hosts, please come in?" Then Jim's familiar words came to mind. "Let's live together with my parents." This was bad. Confused, I followed them into the house. Then, I saw my mother-in-law carefully examining the china cabinet. "What are you doing?" I asked impulsively. Look at this scratch. It's a pity to buy a new one, but doesn't it bother you, Dina? Aren't you a bit careless? I wish you'd use it more carefully." "What?" I chose this. I looked at the spot she was observing, but couldn't see any scratches. Maybe she saw the wood grain as scratches because of presbyopia? But I have presbyopia too, and I don't see it that way. However, my mother-in-law has always made such baseless accusations against me. Maybe she just can't like me because I stole her son, but I'm not convinced either. Well, I'll just let it slide as usual. Then I realized I couldn't see my father-in-law. Hearing a noise from upstairs, I went up with a bad feeling. And there he was, lying on my bed instead of my husband's, face down. I screamed in surprise. And without any shame, he said, "Oh, Dina, are the sheets clean? They smell like you," and laughed. Wait. You absolutely can't do this. Please stop that." I blurted out without any hesitation. What do you mean by that? Why are you, a daughter-in-law, being so impudent?" shouted my father-in-law. "It's not about being a daughter-in-law. Why are you sniffing around in someone else's bed?" I raised my voice. "I'm just checking if they've been washed properly. There's absolutely no need for that." I strongly argued back. "No, it's necessary. As someone who will live in this house, it's an essential check." What are you talking about? I really don't understand what you mean," I said, confused. The thought of living with such a disrespectful daughter-in-law worries me. Living together. I was shocked and lost for words. Suddenly, my husband Jim and my mother-in-law appeared before me. I wondered why it was so noisy. "And here you are," said Jim. "Jim, your father says he's going to live with us. Is that true?" I asked my husband. "Yes, exactly as it sounds," Jim answered. "What? Really? The house mortgage is going to be finally paid off this month, right?" "Yes, that's right, but so I've decided that we'll live here with my parents." "What? Why would you decide such a major thing on your own?" "No, I've been asking about living together for a while now. I told you firmly oppose it. I can't accept living under the same roof as someone who sniffs other people's sheets." I argued strongly. "Did you say that?" I clenched my fists, feeling a mix of surprise and anger. "Besides, I've been seeing another girl for a while now. So, I don't really need to live with you." "What? That's unbelievable." "Well, anyone would prefer a young and cute girl over a wife who won't live with her in-laws." I wondered what he was talking about, but there was more to be shocked about. "If you don't like it, that's fine. Once the mortgage is paid off, we don't need you anymore," my mother-in-law said with a smile. "What?" I asked again in shock. "That's right. You're no longer needed. Now get out," my father-in-law said, grinning and gesturing as if shooing away a dog. "So, I was just a tool to help with mortgage payments to them for a long time. Jim's income alone was uncertain, and both incomes were needed to get a new house and pay off the mortgage quickly. My mother-in-law had endured her son's marriage to me, always hoping for and waiting to be able to live together. Once the mortgage was paid off, she probably thought she could live with her son again. To them, I was useful like a servant until no longer needed. The more I understood the situation, the angrier I became. I regretted not doing anything until it got to that point. But the house was also important to me. There was no reason for me to be cornered like this. But wait a minute. A sudden idea flashed in my mind, and a light shone in my heart that was filled with despair and irritation. All right, let's all live together. What? My quick response surprised Jim and my mother-in-law the most. They might have thought I would leave easily, but they were taken aback by my unexpected answer. A life with a husband, his affair partner, and in-laws sounds fun, doesn't it? My mother-in-law and Jim's reactions to my statement were so funny that I laughed. But of course, that was just a joke. Who would live together? Of course, I'm leaving, I said. They probably didn't expect me to leave so easily. They must have thought I would beg to stay. Jim was unsettled until the moment I left the house, but I ignored him and eventually finalized our divorce. About a month later, having lost the house and enjoying my free time in a hotel after the divorce, I received a call from my ex-mother-in-law. I really need to see you, she said, though it seemed troublesome. I had a hunch, so I agreed to meet her. When I arrived at the cafe for our appointment, there sat my former in-laws with gloomy faces. As soon as they saw me, my mother-in-law tearfully said, "Dina, thank you for coming." Well, the whole family gathered. What do you need from your ex-daughter-in-law? We received a notice yesterday about the division of property. Of course, we're divorced, so we need to discuss property division properly, right? Did you think I wouldn't respond? What? Well, but the situation has changed now. The situation? I repeated the question, and Jim's dejected figure seemed even more disheartened. Jim's company has finally gone bankrupt. Is that so? I thought that might happen. I clapped my hands and said with a smile, I knew it. Dina, what do you mean by I knew it? Jim's income has been decreasing year by year, and last month, there was a delay in his salary payment. That's a sign of a company going under. Such a thing happened. Jim, why didn't you say anything? My mother-in-law's face was filled with anger towards her son. Jim let out a small leap and looked frightened. Well, I never thought the company would fail. People usually notice such things. You're just ignorant, I sharply pointed out, and Jim looked up in surprise, saying what? Immediately, I asked everyone, so you all gathered here to tell me that Jim has lost his job and can't contribute to the property division? Surely that's not the case, right? Everyone was at a loss for words. Well, Jem was the first to speak up. Our house burned down. What? The house, it burned down. I get that. But how did it happen? It was Dad's cigarette. Huh. Ha ha ha. Living with your parents led to a huge loss. Huh? That stuff. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. I had anticipated Jim losing his job. When divorcing, I thought to myself, I don't want to support such an irresponsible, unemployed husband, and living with his parents would bring more problems. There are also issues when caring for the elderly. So, divorcing was the best choice for me. But I never imagined that his father would burn down the house. This could be the perfect opportunity to speak. A mischievous idea awakened in me. Haha, I'm sorry, but it must be really tough for you. Since Dad and Mom left their home, they have nowhere to live and we don't know what to do. Jim said, truly unemployed and homeless now. Please stop saying things like that. I'm also living in a hotel at the moment, so I'm practically homeless too. But that will change soon as I'm about to get my own place. Really? Everyone was surprised at my news of purchasing a new home. Just the reaction I expected. You know that high-rise apartment near the station? I'm moving there soon. A high-rise apartment. Jim's and my in-laws' faces changed completely. Maybe a high-rise apartment is everyone's dream? For me, I chose it just because it has good security. I wasn't interested in higher floors and chose a lower one to avoid the stress of waiting for elevators. What? We want to live there, too. Dina, can we live with you? Please. Forget everything that happened before. Really, Dina? I'm asking to. As expected, my in-laws shamelessly asked to live in the ex-daughter-in-law's house. Their audacity was astounding. Could it be that my father-in-law planned to burn down the apartment as well? I'd like to help, but after all, I was just an unnecessary existence for you all. Just a wallet for mortgage payments. As I spoke sarcastically, my in-laws hurriedly started praising me. We've always admired your housekeeping skills. You certainly brighten up the home. You're thoughtful and beautiful. In contrast, our son was spoiled and grew up to be unemployed, and we can't handle him. Their only son, my ex-husband, was speechless watching them. Even a beloved son becomes unnecessary if he lacks the ability to support them. Such cruel parental thinking. Hey, living with so many people might not be bad, I said, and Jim and his parents looked surprised. It might be lively. Dina, what do you mean? Jim asked. Oh, I mean just what I said. As I smiled kindly, everyone's faces brightened. It might be a bit awkward to live with a divorced husband again. As I said this, my mother-in-law responded, Oh, that's true. Don't worry about it. Jim doesn't need to live with you, she said cheerfully. What? Jim was shocked. That's right. Jim can live somewhere else. We can live together with you. My father-in-law chimed in. Wait a minute, Dad, Mom. Why are you leaving me out? Jim protested. Because we can pay Dina for food with our pension, but you can't, his father explained. So, they planned to possibly live in the high-rise apartment and only paid for meals. I was about to say that, but chose to remain silent and observe the family discord I had instigated. Go ahead, fools, play right into my hands. Then, if you both are receiving pensions, you should find another place to live. We can't afford such wastefulness without a job, not knowing what our future holds. What future are you talking about? You're already in your twilight years. You're an elderly couple with unsteady feet. How rude. We're still healthy. If you're healthy, find a job and use that income for the future. I can't even take a bath or go to job interviews in my current state. Clean yourself in the river. You're always thinking only for yourself. What? You're saying that when you don't do it yourself, you're a failure, an arsonist. Who's the failure? You, the useless son, unemployed and worthless. We don't need you. We're cutting ties. That's fine. I'd rather not have parents who disregard their son. During this family argument, tension filled the air between Jim and his parents. My mother-in-law, in a soft voice, tried to calm my father-in-law. You don't really mean to cut ties, do you? However, Jim's firm stance only fueled his father's anger further, and he refused to retract his decision to sever ties with him. Moreover, my father-in-law jokingly said to me, This makes the room bigger, huh? His words hinted that he had fully accepted a new life in the high-rise apartment, planning to live in my home. I asked with a bit of sarcasm, Can't you misunderstanding something? Everyone looked at me in surprise. The size of the room hasn't changed from the beginning. I have no intention of living with you all, I calmly stated. What do you mean by that, Dina? Asked my father-in-law. I replied indifferently, It doesn't have any deep meaning. I just said that having many people around would make life lively. Nothing more, nothing less. At that moment, my mother-in-law objected, What? But from your words, it felt like you were considering living with us. I raised my voice slightly. It's quite interesting to see you two so easily choose life in a high-rise apartment over your son. Jim always disregarded my opinions and wanted to live with you. But what about now? Isn't it time to realize how unreasonable your proposals have been, Jim? Can't you see the reality even after your house has burned down? Then Jim looked at his parents with deep anger. Indeed, you're right, Dina. I believed in giving back to my parents, but it seems they never thought the same of me. Wait, Jim. My in-laws couldn't hide their surprise at his statement. Jim, I was wrong. Let's forget the estrangement. So, Father, you just want to rely on your son because you can't live in my house, right? What? No, that's not it. Do you really think so? You seem clearly unsettled. As I smiled and said this, my father-in-law began to panic. Seeing this, Jim's anger became more apparent. I don't need such parents. Estrangement, it is. Jim shouted angrily, and his parents begged frantically, please listen, but he wouldn't hear them. Instead, he turned to me. Thanks to you, I've come to realize I want to start over. What, really? Yes, I'm serious. You did all this to wake me up, right? Haha, stop it. That's too convenient for you. What, why? I just thought it might be fun to see someone who abandoned his wife to get along with his parents now struggling with them. What? You're just an object of property division to me now. What? Property division? You really plan to demand that in this situation? This situation? That's irrelevant. It's obvious. I signed the divorce papers quickly to leave the house, but property division can still be claimed after divorce, so I intend to take it seriously. Wait, hey, don't you love me anymore? What charm could someone without an address or a stable job possibly have? Your head's empty too. I can't believe it. Later, unable to reconcile with me, Jim raged at his parents. This is all your fault. Before the police arrived, I left the scene. And then, I did exactly as I said and pursued the property division. Honestly, it wasn't a large amount, but it marked the complete end of my relationship with Jim. Jim, now without an address or job, struggled with reduced savings due to the property division and became estranged from his parents. He seems to be living a wandering life, moving from various places, doing odd jobs daily, staying in cheap lodgings, sometimes even sleeping in parks. Unable to find stable work due to his age, he's leading a nomadic life. His parents didn't repair their relationship with their son and decided to live on their pension alone, essentially disowning him. They have always been a couple only concerned with themselves. Meanwhile, I have been living a relatively affluent life due to my investment activities I started before the divorce. Recently, I began attending a local programming school to improve my computer skills. I'm the only one in my age group, but I'm surrounded by children, making me feel like I have many grandchildren. Though I never had children, I find warmth in being surrounded by children in this way. A primary school girl named Tracy seems interested in knitting, and I sometimes teach her during breaks at the school. Watching her and other children join in knitting together brings a smile to my face. Despite a life full of ups and downs, I plan to continue living a life that's true to myself.
I was 5 years old when I first understood that my sister Bethany hated me, not disliked, not found annoying, actual hatred. It was a strange realization for a child, my small heart crumbling as I realized someone who shares your blood could look at you with such cold detachment. Bethany was 10 years older than me, already a teenager when I was still learning to tie my shoes. You'd think having such an age gap would make her protective of me, maybe even maternal. However, she didn't. She resented me from day one, even though I had tried for years to understand why. My earliest memories are stained with her hostility. My parents, Victor and Eleanor, both worked long hours, him at the university where he taught, her at the law firm downtown. They often left Bethany in charge of watching me. Just for a few hours, they'd say, kissing me while I swallowed back tears. As soon as their car pulled out of the driveway, Bethany's fake smile would drop. Time for bed, Olivia, she'd say, even if it was only 6 p.m. But it's still light outside, I'd protest weakly. Doesn't matter. Go to your room, she'd march me upstairs, push me into my bedroom, and then came the sound I still hear in my nightmares, the distinct click of the lock. My room would transform from a safe haven into a prison cell. Bethany had convinced my parents to keep the outside lock for my safety when I was a toddler. Now it was her weapon. Bethany, please let me out, I'd call, my small fists barely making a sound against the wooden door. She'd hiss from the hallway. You need to be quiet, Olivia. You know what happens to noisy little girls, right? The monsters under the bed get hungry. I'd freeze, my heart pounding. There's no monsters, I'd whisper, trying to convince myself more than her. What's that scratching sound? I think one's waking up. She'd scratch her fingernails against the bottom of my door, and I'd leap onto my bed, pulling my feet up, convinced that something was about to grab my ankles. I'd sit there for hours, too terrified to move, too afraid to even reach for the light switch. When I'd hear my parents' car in the driveway, Bethany would quickly unlock my door and whisper, "If you tell them, I'll make it worse next time. They won't believe you anyway." But once, when I was about 6, I did tell them. My parents had returned to find me pale and trembling, with tear tracks dried on my cheeks. Bethany locked me in my room again and said there were monsters under the bed, I said, my voice shaking. My dad's brow furrowed, but before he could speak, Bethany rolled her eyes dramatically. There she goes again with her stories. Remember last week when she said she saw microphones in her room? That had been a real concern after reading about surveillance, and Bethany knew it. But my parents nodded, exchanging knowing glances. My dad said firmly, "Olivia, you shouldn't make up stories about your sister. She gives up her time to watch you, and you should be grateful." Grateful. That word became a splinter in my heart, festering for years afterward. How could I be grateful for torment, for fear, for the certainty that in my own home, my word meant nothing against hers? The pattern continued for 2 more years. Bethany babysitting me, locked away, and the psychological torment growing more elaborate. Sometimes she'd whisper about hidden cameras watching my every move. Other times she'd describe devices that could hear everything I said when the lights went out. When Bethany graduated high school and announced she was going to college in Michigan, 5 states away, I pretended to be sad for my parents' sake. But inside, I felt a balloon of relief expanding in my chest. Freedom. Safety. The possibility of a normal childhood. The day she left, I watched from the window as my parents hugged her in the driveway. When the car finally disappeared down the street, I walked to my room and searched every corner for the devices she'd convinced me were there. But nothing was found. No cameras and stuffed animals, no microphones under furniture. The only monster had driven away, and I had 4 whole years before I'd have to see her again. Those years were the best of my childhood. Without Bethany's constant presence, my parents and I grew closer. They weren't just academic professionals who dropped in to check my homework between lectures. They became real people with laughter and stories and weekend plans that included me. Mom taught me about famous legal cases that shaped history. Dad showed me how to conduct simple science experiments and didn't mind when they made a mess. We had documentary nights and chess competitions. It was like finally being allowed into the family I'd been orbiting for years. But the shadow of Bethany's return loomed over each holiday break and summer vacation. She'd arrive with designer bags and stories about her sophisticated college life, bringing expensive gifts for our parents, a first edition signed biography for Dad, an antique law book for Mom. For me? Nothing. Not even a bookmark or a pencil from her university bookstore. The first time it happened at Christmas when I was 9, I couldn't hide my hurt as I watched Mom and Dad unwrap their presents while my hands remained empty. "Where's Olivia's gift?" Mom asked, noticing my expression. Bethany waved dismissively. She wouldn't appreciate anything intellectual. "I'll get her a children's science kit on the way home if it's that big a deal." But she never did. And the next holiday it was the same pattern, and the next. Eventually, I stopped expecting anything and learned to immerse myself in my studies when she visited. My high school was a refuge from the family drama. I wasn't popular, but I excelled academically, had supportive friends, and teachers who recognized my scientific aptitude. By 17, I had Princeton applications ready, a research internship at the local laboratory, and a future that seemed refreshingly Bethany-free. Then came the announcement, "Your sister's getting married in March," Mom said one night over dinner, her face glowing with excitement. "Isn't that wonderful?" "Great," I nodded, calculating in my head that would be during my spring break of senior year. I didn't love the idea of spending my vacation at Bethany's wedding, but maybe it would be a chance to finally be included as an adult family member. Maybe I'd even be a bridesmaid. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. 2 weeks later, Bethany swept into our house with a diamond ring and her fiancé in tow. Warren seemed nice enough, quiet, well-dressed, with a polite smile that never quite reached his eyes. Perfect match for my sister, I thought uncharitably. "We're planning an intimate ceremony," Bethany announced over dinner. Actually, we've decided to have a wedding for intellectually mature guests only. The table went quiet. Dad cleared his throat. What exactly does that mean? Warren and I want sophisticated conversation and academic atmosphere. No distractions. Bethany's eyes fixed on me. No one who can't contribute to meaningful discussions. I stared back, the meaning crystal clear. I'm starting Princeton in the fall. I've already been published in the school science journal. Rules are rules, Olivia. I'm sure you understand. I looked to my parents for support. Mom was studying her plate. Dad shifted uncomfortably. It's Bethany's wedding, he finally said. She gets to decide how she wants it. Exactly, Bethany said triumphantly. Besides, someone needs to organize the research materials while everyone's gone. I felt like I'd been slapped. They were all going, my parents, relatives from both sides, family friends, everyone except me. Left behind like an unwanted lab specimen. After dinner, I retreated to my room, fuming. I didn't cry. I was too angry for tears. Part of me wasn't even surprised. This was classic Bethany, finding the perfect way to exclude me while appearing intellectually justified to everyone else. The day of the wedding, I stood in the driveway watching my parents drive away in their formal clothes, my heart sinking. For the next 8 hours, I wandered the empty house, reading research papers and tried not to think about what was going on in the wedding hall. That evening, when my parents returned, they were full of stories, the elegant decorations, the sophisticated vows, the gourmet food. I nodded and smiled in all the right places, playing the role of the interested daughter. 3 days later, scrolling through social media, I saw Bethany posting her wedding album. I shouldn't have looked it, but curiosity got the better of me. There, in the family photos, stood my cousin Violet, grinning in a tasteful blue dress. Violet, who was exactly 2 months younger than me. I zoomed in on the photo, my stomach clenching. But no, it was definitely Violet. My hand shook as I dialed her number. Oh, she said casually. Bethany said the intellectual maturity thing was just a guideline, not a strict rule. Didn't you know? I hung up without responding. The betrayal burned in my throat. It wasn't about having intellectually stimulating conversations. It was about excluding me specifically. And everyone, including my parents, had gone along with it. That moment changed something fundamental in me. I stopped trying to earn Bethany's approval or my parents' understanding. I focused on graduating, securing research scholarships, and planning my escape to Princeton. The next time I saw Bethany was at Thanksgiving, 6 months later. I was freshly 18 and heading to Princeton in January. She made small talk about married life, and I responded with polite disinterest. The elephant in the room, her wedding deception, went unmentioned. My college years flew by. I studied biochemistry, made friends who knew nothing about my family dynamics, and gradually built a life that was entirely my own. I came home for major holidays but kept my visits brief. Bethany appeared intermittently, usually when she wanted to showcase her success to our parents. Then came the baby announcements, first Caleb, then Hunter, and finally Liam. 3 boys in 6 years. Bethany quit her real estate job to become a full-time mom, and suddenly our parents' house became her unofficial childcare center. I had earned my doctorate by then and landed a position at a biotech firm. My house was 40 minutes from my parents but light years from the chaos that now defined their home. Every time I visited, there was evidence of my nephew's destruction, damaged books, broken antiques, crayon on artwork. I tried to time my visits for when Bethany and her children weren't there, but sometimes our paths crossed. The boys would run wild, screaming and throwing things, while Bethany scrolled through Instagram, posting perfectly filtered family photos. When I suggested they use indoor voices or not touch Dad's rare manuscripts, Bethany would snap, "Don't tell my gifted children what to do." So I didn't. Instead, I started avoiding family gatherings altogether, until the phone calls began. "Olivia, dear, could you come over tomorrow?" Mom's voice had that particular tone, exhausted but trying to sound calm. "We could use some help reorganizing." Bethany just picked up the boys. The first time I went without complaint. I spent 4 hours helping my parents restore order. The second time I gritted my teeth but still went. The third time something in me snapped. Mom, why are you always calling me to clean up after Bethany's kids? Why isn't she doing it? There was a long pause. I'm sorry, sweetie. You're right. We shouldn't have asked. I hung up feeling guilty but resolute. That evening I called Bethany directly. You need to stop treating Mom and Dad's house like your personal childcare center, I said without preamble. Dad is 70 with high blood pressure. Mom's arthritis is getting worse. They shouldn't be cleaning up after your kids. Mind your own business, Olivia, she replied coldly. This is between me and them. They're my parents too, and you're taking advantage of them. I'm raising 3 gifted children. What would you know about that? Her voice dripped with condescension. Your research doesn't talk back. Don't stick your PhD where it doesn't belong. The line went dead. I called my parents immediately after hanging up with Bethany. My hands were shaking with anger, but my voice was steady. Mom, Dad, I want you to stop babysitting for Bethany unless she agrees to clean up after her kids. Those boys are completely out of control, and Bethany doesn't lift a finger. There was a long silence. Then Dad cleared his throat. We'll talk to her. I wasn't sure they would, but a week later I got a furious call from Bethany. What the hell did you say to Mom and Dad? She demanded, her voice shrill. They told me I can't bring the kids over unless I clean up afterward. Good, I said simply. You had no right to turn them against me. Who's going to watch my kids now? Do you know how expensive childcare is? Not my problem. You chose to have them. Take some responsibility. She hung up on me again. I later heard from Mom that Bethany did start cleaning up after her visits, not thoroughly. But enough that my parents weren't left with a disaster zone. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. For once, I hadn't backed down. Life went on. I focused on my research, earning recognition in my field. I dated casually, but nothing serious stuck until I met Max at a medical conference. He was brilliant, compassionate, and refreshingly straightforward. After years of walking on eggshells with my family, his honesty was like oxygen. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on my 28th birthday with an elegant ring and a promise of a drama-free future. I said yes, immediately, but even as we celebrated, a dark thought intruded: the wedding would mean facing Bethany again. We could elope, Max suggested when I explained my concerns. Hawaii. Just us. But I shook my head. I won't let her rob me of a proper wedding. I want my colleagues there, your family, everyone, except my nephews. Max raised an eyebrow. Bold move. Your sister won't like that. I know, I took a deep breath. But after seeing what her kids did to my parents' anniversary party last month, the destroying Dad's rare books, the interrupting the toasts, I can't risk it. So I made the announcement on social media: we're thrilled to be planning our wedding for next June. Note, this will be a child-free event. No guests under 16, please. We love your little ones but want everyone to enjoy an intellectually stimulating evening. Most responses were positive. Colleagues with children promised to arrange sitters. Max's family completely understood. My post received likes and supportive comments, all except from Bethany. A week later, I went to my parents for our usual Saturday dinner. Walking through the front door, my heart sank as the familiar chaos hit me: shrieks, thumps, something breakable crashing. Bethany and her boys had happened to stop by. Caleb, now 12, ran past me with a water gun. Hunter, 8 years old, was jumping from sofa to love seat, his shoes leaving dirt marks on the upholstery. Liam, the youngest at 6, was pulling books off shelves and dropping them on the floor. Bethany sat at the dining table with Mom, calmly sipping coffee as if surrounded by perfect tranquility. Halfway through dinner, Bethany casually mentioned my wedding. I'll need to know the exact schedule so I can plan around the boys' activities. I put down my fork. The boys aren't invited. It's adults only, as I mentioned in my post. She laughed. That doesn't apply to family, obviously. It applies to everyone. No exceptions. But I can't leave them for a whole day. I'll have to bring them. I stared at her, wondering if she was truly this oblivious or just testing me. No, you won't. You'll need to find a sitter. There's no one I trust with them for that long. They're coming with me. Her tone was final, as if the matter was settled. Bethany, I said slowly, let me be clear. If you show up with your children, you won't be allowed in. It's my wedding, my rules. You're just doing this to get back at me, she snapped, her composed facade cracking, because I didn't let you come to my wedding. I blinked in surprise. What? That was 10 years ago. This has nothing to do with that. Liar. You've always been vindictive, always making up stories about me. I gestured to where Hunter was now using the curtains as a climbing rope. This is why your kids aren't invited. They're completely out of control, and you do nothing about it. Bethany stood up so abruptly her chair fell backward. Boys, we're leaving. She stormed out, children trailing behind her like destructive ducklings, leaving the usual disaster in their wake. After they left, Dad and Mom gave me disappointed looks. Was that necessary? Mom asked. You could have handled it more diplomatically. Like how? By letting her walk all over me like she always has? No thanks. Dad sighed. They're just children, Olivia. They're family. Look around you, I said, gesturing to the chaos. Do you want this happening during my vows? During our first dance? While everyone's trying to enjoy a meal that Max and I are paying a fortune for. They didn't have an answer for that. 2 days later, Bethany posted a long, self-pitying rant on social media, heartbroken that my sister is excluding my precious boys from her wedding out of spite. Family should come first, not petty grudges from the past. #family first #heartbroken mom. Instead of responding directly to Bethany, I simply commented, to clarify, our adult-only policy applies to all guests under 16, not just specific children. We want an elegant evening that all guests can enjoy intellectually and socially. What I didn't expect was the flood of comments that followed, not from our friends, but from relatives. Those boys knocked over my grandmother's antique vase at the family reunion. They pulled the tablecloth off at Thanksgiving and shattered my heirloom china. One of them bit my daughter during the Christmas party while Bethany was busy taking Instagram photos. Bethany deleted her post within hours. The weeks leading up to my wedding were a blur of final arrangements, dress fittings, and nervous anticipation. Bethany had gone suspiciously quiet after her social media backfire, no calls, no texts, no more complaints to our parents. The silence made my stomach knot with anxiety. That's when my phone rang. It was Violet. Olivia, I need to tell you something, she said, her voice low and urgent. I was talking to Jen yesterday, you know, Bethany's friend from Princeton, the one who was her maid of honor. According to Jen, Bethany is planning to have the boys accidentally spill red wine on your dress during the reception, and Caleb is supposed to push over your wedding cake. Jen felt horrible about it and confided in me. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence, my hands trembling. Even for Bethany, this was a new low, not just ignoring my wishes but actively plotting to ruin my wedding day. I told Max, expecting him to be as shocked as I was. Instead, he was eerily calm. We'll hire security, he said simply. Give them pictures of Bethany and the boys. No drama, no scene. They just don't get in. We hired 2 security guards from a professional firm, gave them photos of Bethany and her children, and instructed them not to allow them past the entrance under any circumstances. The morning of my wedding arrived with perfect blue skies. As my bridesmaids helped me into my dress, I felt a surprising sense of calm. Whatever happened with Bethany, I was marrying the man I love. That was what mattered. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. At 3:30, my phone buzzed with a text from security. Subjects have arrived with 3 minors. Proceeding as instructed. I took a deep breath and handed my phone to my maid of honor. Don't tell me anything else about my sister unless the building's on fire. The ceremony was beautiful. Walking down the aisle toward Max, seeing his face light up, in that moment, Bethany didn't exist. We exchanged vows under an arch of white roses, and when the minister pronounced us husband and wife, the applause felt like a release of years of tension. It wasn't until the reception that reality intruded. Mom appeared at my elbow as I greeted guests, her face tight with anger. How could you? She hissed. Your sister is outside in tears because those guards you hired wouldn't let her in. I kept my smile in place for nearby guests. I made it clear children weren't welcome. She chose to bring them anyway. Their family, Olivia. What do you expect her to do with them? The same thing every other parent here did, find a babysitter. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Your dad and I are going to take her home. I hope you're satisfied with yourself. I watched as they slipped out, choosing Bethany yet again. It hurt, but less than I expected. Perhaps I'd been preparing for this moment my entire life. The rest of the reception was perfect. Our friends danced, relatives shared stories, and Max's grandmother taught everyone a folk dance that had us all laughing. Our cake remained upright, my dress stayed pristine, and no one threw food or climbed the curtains. 2 days after we returned from our honeymoon, I decided to call my parents. I thought they deserved to know why I'd hired security, to understand I wasn't just being vindictive. Mom and Dad, there's something you should know. Bethany was planning to have her kids ruin my wedding. Violet found out from Bethany's friend Jen that she was going to have the boys spill wine on my dress and knock over the wedding cake. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then Mom's voice, cold and dismissive, Olivia, I can't believe you're still fabricating stories about Bethany after all these years. I'm not making it up, I protested, my heart racing. Violet heard it directly from Jen. Why would I lie about this? Dad sighed heavily. You've always had quite an imagination, Olivia. Always seeing the worst in your sister. This has gone too far. I closed my eyes, transported back to childhood, Bethany locking me in my dark room, whispering about hidden cameras, then calling me delusional when I told our parents. I didn't make it up, I said quietly. Violet can confirm it. Violet has always taken your side, Dad dismissed. Bethany was very hurt by your actions. I said back to them, I've been hurt by hers my entire life, but that doesn't seem to matter to any of you. The line went silent for a moment. We should discuss this in person, he finally said. I don't think so, Dad. I'm done explaining myself. I love you both, but I won't apologize for protecting my wedding day from Bethany's spite. So that's it? You're just cutting us off? I sighed. No, I'm setting boundaries. When you're ready to see me as an equal member of this family, not just Bethany's troublesome little sister who needs to fall in line, I'll be here. That was 6 months ago. Since then, silence. I hear updates through Violet. Bethany still dumps her children on my parents regularly. The boys are still destructive, still disrespectful. My parents are increasingly exhausted, dealing with health issues that make keeping up with 3 unruly children nearly impossible. But they won't set boundaries with Bethany, and I won't pretend everything is okay. Sometimes I dream about reconciliation, Sunday dinners where everyone behaves civilly, holidays without tension, my parents finally seeing the pattern that's been clear to me since childhood. But dreams aren't reality. The reality is that Bethany was right about one thing, I was a dreamer as a child. I dreamed of a sister who would protect me instead of terrorize me, parents who would believe me instead of dismiss me, a family where love didn't come with conditions. Now I dream of different things, the family Max and I might create someday, one where no child feels less valued than another, where words like fair and respect aren't just empty concepts.
I never thought I'd hear my own sister plotting against me, but there I was, frozen behind the kitchen door, listening to her conspire with my mother-in-law about my future, or rather, the lack of it. April's been trying for 2 years now. Hazel's voice dripped with disdain. No grandchildren in sight. The Wheeler fortune needs proper heirs, Lisa. You understand what I'm saying, don't you? My name is April, and until that moment, I thought my biggest problem was not being able to conceive. Now I realized my infertility wasn't just a personal struggle, it was ammunition. But she's my sister. Lisa's voice wavered. And what about Jude? He loves her. Love doesn't secure legacies, Hazel replied. My son will understand in time. The family needs someone fertile, someone who can carry on the Wheeler name. I pressed my hand against my mouth. stifling a gasp. The weekly family dinner suddenly felt like a trap. The familiar scent of pot roast, now sickeningly sweet. "Come in, April," Hazel called out, making me jump. "The roast is getting cold." I composed myself and pushed through the door, plastering on a smile. "Sorry, I was just freshening up." Lisa wouldn't meet my eyes as I took my seat. Her fingers fidgeted with her napkin, a nervous habit from childhood. Hazel, on the other hand, smiled broadly, passing the gravy boat with practiced grace. "Where's Jude?" I asked, noticing my husband's empty chair. "Still on that work call," Hazel replied. "You know how demanding his position is. The Wheeler business empire doesn't run itself." The empire that would apparently skip right over me. "Actually," I set down my fork, "I have some news about our fertility journey." Lisa's head snapped up, and Hazel's smile tightened. "The doctor says there's a new treatment we could try," I continued, watching their reactions. "Jude and I have been discussing it." "Treatments are expensive," Hazel cut in, "and often disappointing. Maybe it's time to accept that some women aren't meant to be mothers." The words hit like a slap. I'd heard cruel things before, but never so blatantly from family. "Hazel!" Lisa gasped. "What? Someone needs to be practical here." Hazel dabbed her lips with her napkin. "The Wheeler legacy is at stake." Just then, Jude walked in, his tie loosened after his call. "What legacy are we talking about?" "Your mother was just explaining how I'm not worthy of it," I said, standing up. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "April, don't be dramatic," Hazel scolded. "I'm simply being realistic about our family's future." Jude moved to my side, his hand finding the small of my back. "Mother, what's going on?" "Nothing, darling. April's just sensitive about her condition." I turned to face my husband. "Did you know your mother's been planning to write me out of the family inheritance because I can't have children?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jude's face darkened as he looked between his mother and me. "That's not possible," he said finally. "The trust is ironclad. Grandfather made sure of it." Hazel's composure cracked slightly. "There are ways, dear. Legal ways. For the good of the family." "The good of the family?" Jude's voice rose. "April is family." "For now," Hazel muttered, but we all heard it. I grabbed my purse from the counter. "I think I need some air." "April, wait," Lisa called after me, but I was already heading for the door. "Let her go," I heard Hazel say. "She needs to accept reality." Outside, the cool evening air hit my face, and I pulled out my phone. With trembling fingers, I dialed a number I never thought I'd need. "Walker Hanson's office," a voice answered. "Walker, it's April Wheeler. Remember when you said to call if I ever needed financial advice? Well, I need more than advice. I need a plan." "Of course, April. When would you like to meet?" I looked back at the house, where I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. "Tomorrow. First thing." As I hung up, a new sense of determination settled over me. Hazel thought she could push me out? She had no idea what I was capable of. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, family, and justice. And I was going to fight for all three. Walker's office felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos of the past 24 hours. He listened intently as I explained everything, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "So your mother-in-law wants to divert your inheritance to your sister?" He leaned forward, fingers steepled. "That's ambitious of her. She thinks she's found a legal loophole," I said, clutching my coffee cup. "Something about heirs and bloodlines. There's always someone who thinks they've found a loophole." Walker pulled out a thick folder. "But your father-in-law was thorough when he set up the trust. Let me show you something." He spread several documents across his desk. "See this clause? It specifically protects spousal rights, regardless of children. Hazel can't touch your portion without your signature. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. She'll find another way. She always does. Then we'll be smarter, Walker said, pulling out a fresh legal pad. I have some ideas that could protect your interests permanently. As we discussed strategies, my phone buzzed. Jude's face lit up the screen. I hesitated before answering. Where are you? His voice was tight with worry. Mother's been calling all morning, trying to apologize. I'm handling some business, I replied, watching Walker sketch out a financial flowchart. And I don't want her apologies. April, please, come home so we can talk about this. I'll be home later. I ended the call, turning back to Walker. What's next? He slid a document across the desk. First, we establish your own trust, independent of the Wheeler estate. It's perfectly legal and will give you complete control. As I read through the paperwork, a wave of nausea hit me. I gripped the edge of his desk, breathing deeply. Are you all right? Walker asked, concerned. Just stressed, I managed, but something clicked in my mind. I'd been feeling off for weeks, but with everything happening, I need to make a stop before going home, I told Walker, gathering my things. How soon can we implement these changes? Give me 2 days to prepare everything, but April? He caught my eye. Be careful. Family disputes over money can turn ugly fast. An hour later, I sat in my car outside the pharmacy, staring at the pregnancy test in my hands. 2 pink lines. Clear as day. My hands shook as I called my doctor's office, scheduling an immediate appointment. By late afternoon, it was confirmed. I was 8 weeks pregnant. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of trying, countless treatments, and now, just when Hazel had decided I was barren, my phone buzzed again. Lisa's name flashed on the screen. April, I'm so sorry, she blurted before I could speak. I never should have listened to Hazel. The things she said. Save it, I cut her off. You chose your side. No, please listen. She's been talking to lawyers, looking for ways to challenge the trust. She's obsessed with this idea of proper heirs. I touched my still flat stomach, a plan forming. Is she now? I should have told you sooner. She made it sound so reasonable at first, about preserving the family legacy. And what about preserving our relationship, Lisa? Did that matter at all? The silence on the other end spoke volumes. I want to make this right, she finally said. Then prove it. Tell me everything Hazel's planning. After hanging up, I sat in my car, processing everything. The pregnancy, the trust, Hazel's schemes. I should have felt overwhelmed, but instead, I felt strangely calm. For the first time, I had real power. Not just legal documents, but the one thing Hazel wanted most. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Walker. Documents will be ready tomorrow. Are you sure about this? I typed back quickly. Absolutely. And Walker? There's been a development. I'll need to add one more name to that trust. As I drove home, I thought about how to play this. Hazel wanted an heir. She'd get one, but not on her terms. The baby growing inside me was my ace in the hole, and for now, it would remain my secret. Let Hazel think she was winning. Let her plot and scheme. I had time on my side, and soon, I'd have everything legally locked down. Then, when the moment was right, I'd show her exactly what kind of woman she was dealing with. I pulled into our driveway, spotting Jude's car. Time to face my husband. He deserved to know about the trust changes, but the baby? That news could wait. After all, timing was everything, and I was just getting started. The next few weeks were a delicate dance of deception. Morning sickness became my constant companion, but I blamed it on stress whenever Jude asked. The guilt of keeping this secret from him gnawed at me, but every time I considered telling him, Hazel would make another move that reminded me why I needed to wait. Like today's casual lunch invitation. "April, darling, you've barely touched your salad," Hazel cooed across the restaurant table. "Are you still upset about our little disagreement?" I forced myself to spear a cherry tomato. "Just not hungry." "Well, I wanted to discuss something important." She reached into her designer handbag. "I've been thinking about the family's future." "Have you?" I kept my voice neutral, though my stomach churned, and not just from morning sickness. She slid a document across the table. "This is a draft of a new arrangement. Very generous, I think. It would give you a comfortable settlement if you and Jude were to part ways." My fork clattered against the plate. "Are you trying to buy me out of my marriage?" "I'm being practical. You're young, April. You could start fresh, find someone more compatible." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Mom? April? What a surprise." Sophia, my sister-in-law, stood by our table. I'd never been so grateful to see her. "We were just having a private discussion," Hazel said sharply. "Perfect timing." I grabbed my purse. "I was just leaving. Sophia, walk me out." Outside, Sophia grabbed my arm. "What was that about? You looked ready to throw your water in Mum's face." "Your mother's trying to orchestrate my divorce," I laughed bitterly. "Complete with a payment plan. She's gone too far this time." Sophia shook her head. "You know she's been meeting with estate lawyers, right? I overheard her on the phone yesterday." "Did you hear anything specific?" "Something about biological heirs and trust conditions. April, she's serious about this." I touched my stomach instinctively, then caught myself. "I need to make a call." Once Sophia left, I ducked into my car and called Lisa. "She did what?" Lisa's voice cracked. "A divorce settlement? That's insane." "Still think she's being reasonable?" I asked. "No, Lisa hesitated. "Look, there's something else. She asked me to meet with her lawyer next week. Something about signing papers as a potential beneficiary." "And will you?" "I don't know." "April, I feel sick about all this. Maybe I should tell Jude." "Don't," I cut in. "Not yet. Just keep me informed." After hanging up, I drove to Walker's office. He needed to know about this latest development. His secretary waved me straight in. "Perfect timing. I was about to call you." Walker looked up from his computer. "You're not going to believe what I found. Hazel's been busy. There's a paper trail of her meetings with 3 different estate lawyers." "Looking for someone to help her break the trust?" "Yes. But here's the interesting part." He turned his monitor toward me. "She's also been inquiring about genetic testing requirements for inheritance claims." My blood ran cold. "She wants proof that any future children are actually Wheelers." "Exactly. But our new trust structure makes that irrelevant. Everything's in place now. Your assets are protected, and once you're ready to reveal your pregnancy..." A wave of dizziness hit me. Walker quickly grabbed a water bottle from his mini-fridge. "Thanks," I said, sipping slowly. "I just need to hold out a little longer. Let her think she's winning." "Speaking of winning," Walker pulled out another document. "You should see this. It's a copy of what she's planning to present to the family board next month." I scanned the pages, my anger rising with each paragraph. Hazel had detailed every possible way to challenge my position in the family, including some surprisingly personal attacks. She's been watching me, I realized, documenting everything, even my doctor's appointments, which makes your pregnancy all the more powerful when revealed. She's building her case on your supposed infertility. I stood up, suddenly feeling energized despite my nausea. "Keep those documents safe. We'll need them later." "Where are you going?" "To see my sister. It's time to find out exactly whose side she's really on." As I drove to Lisa's house, I thought about the baby growing inside me. Hazel wanted proof of Wheeler blood? she'd get it, along with proof that she'd picked the wrong daughter-in-law to mess with. My phone buzzed with a text from Jude. Mother wants us all for dinner tonight, says it's important. Perfect. Let Hazel gather her pieces on the board. Soon enough, she'd learn that while she was playing checkers, I'd been playing chess all along, and I was about to make my next move. Lisa's face crumpled when she opened her door. I've been trying to call you. I know. I brushed past her into her living room. But we need to talk in person. April, I can't do this anymore. Lisa collapsed onto her couch. Hazel came by this morning with more paperwork. She wants me to sign something about being a contingent beneficiary. I sat across from her, studying my sister's face. The guilt was eating her alive. Good. Did you sign it? No, I told her I needed time to think. Lisa wrung her hands. She's not who I thought she was. The things she's saying about you, the plans she's making. Tell me everything. She wants to present evidence to the family board that your marriage to Jude was... Lisa swallowed hard. Strategic. That you knew about your fertility issues before the wedding but hid them. My laugh was sharp. Of course she does. This isn't funny, April. She's trying to destroy you. No. I leaned forward. She's trying to control me. There's a difference. Lisa's eyes widened. You have a plan, don't you? That's why you're so calm. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Mom's called an emergency family dinner tonight. Something big is happening. I saw that look, Lisa said. What's going on? I stood up, smoothing my dress. Come to dinner tonight. You'll want to see this. April, wait. Lisa grabbed my arm. I need to know. Can you ever forgive me? I turned to face her, remembering all our years growing up together, all the times she'd had my back before Hazel got in her head. That depends on what you do next, I said softly. Choose carefully, Lisa. Family loyalty goes both ways. Hours later, I arrived at the Wheeler mansion for dinner. Jude met me at the door, his face tense. Mother's been in her study all afternoon with her lawyer, he whispered, kissing my cheek. Whatever this is about, it's serious. When isn't it? I squeezed his hand, fighting back a wave of nausea. This pregnancy was determined to make its presence known at the worst moments. The dining room was already full. Sophia sat with her husband, while Lisa perched nervously on a chair near the window. Hazel stood at the head of the table, practically glowing with satisfaction. April, dear, so glad you could join us. Her smile was razor-sharp. I have some important announcements to make. Before you start, I cut in, I have something to say. Hazel's smile faltered. This really can't wait. I know about the lawyers, Hazel. The room fell silent. I know about the trust challenges, the genetic testing requirements, all of it. How dare you? I also know about the divorce settlement you tried to offer me at lunch. I turned to Jude, whose face had gone pale. Your mother thinks she can buy me off. Mother? Jude's voice was dangerous. Is this true? Everything I've done is for this family's future, Hazel snapped. A future that requires proper heirs, not some barren... That's enough! Lisa stood up suddenly. I won't help you hurt my sister anymore. I'm done. Hazel's face reddened. Sit down, Lisa. You signed an agreement. No, I didn't. Lisa moved to stand beside me. And I won't. Then you'll regret it, Hazel snarled, pulling out a thick envelope. Because, as of today, the trust conditions are changing. I have documentation proving... Actually, I interrupted, you don't have anything. The trust is ironclad, remember? But more importantly... I paused, letting the moment build. I have something you don't. And what's that? I locked eyes with her, savoring the moment. Proof that everything you've been planning is based on a lie, but that can wait until dessert. Wouldn't want to spoil the meal, would we? Hazel's hands shook as she gripped her envelope. Jude looked between us, confusion and anger warring on his face. Sophia leaned forward, eyes bright with interest, while Lisa stood firmly by my side. The stage was set. My evidence was safely with Walker. My new trust was established, and my secret was still safely hidden. Let Hazel make her announcements. By the end of this dinner, everything would change. I took my seat, ignoring the churning in my stomach. Shall we eat? The tension during dinner was thick enough to cut with the sterling silver knives laid out before us. Hazel kept shooting daggers at me between bites of her roast, while Jude pushed his food around his plate, lost in thought. More wine, April? Hazel offered, her smile not reaching her eyes. No, thank you. I touched my water glass. I'm avoiding alcohol these days. Sophia's eyebrows shot up, but she quickly looked down at her plate. She'd always been the perceptive one. Health kick? Hazel's voice dripped with sarcasm. How admirable. Mother, Jude warned. Enough. Oh, but we're just getting started. Hazel dabbed her lips with her napkin and stood. Since April's so eager to discuss family matters, let's begin. She distributed copies of a document around the table. As you can see, I've had our lawyers draft a new amendment to the family trust. It simply clarifies certain requirements for beneficiaries. Lisa's hand shook as she picked up her copy. This is horrible, she whispered. It's necessary, Hazel corrected. The Wheeler legacy must be protected. By requiring DNA tests for all future children. Sophia's voice was incredulous. Mother, this is insane. Actually, I reached for my purse. I have some documents of my own to share. Hazel's face tightened. This isn't the time. I think it's the perfect time. I pulled out the folder Walker had prepared. These are copies of all your meetings with various estate lawyers over the past month, including some very interesting notes about your plans to have me removed from the family. Jude snatched up the papers, his face darkening as he read. Mother, what have you done? Only what needed to be done. Hazel slammed her hand on the table. This woman has failed to provide an heir. She's destroying everything your father built. No, Lisa stood up again. You're the one destroying things. I've watched you manipulate and scheme, and I won't be part of it anymore. Sit down, Hazel hissed. You have no idea what you're giving up. She knows exactly what she's doing, I said, reaching for my sister's hand. She's choosing family over greed. The dining room door opened, and Walker stepped in. Am I interrupting? Who let you in? Hazel demanded. I did, Sophia said. April asked me to make sure he could join us for dessert. Walker placed his briefcase on the table. I have some documents that might interest everyone, particularly regarding the original trust conditions and Mrs. Wheeler's recent, creative interpretations of them. This is a private family matter. Hazel stood, her face flushed. Sit down, Mother. Jude's voice was steel. I want to hear everything. Walker began laying out papers. First, there's the matter of the original trust, which explicitly protects spousal rights. Then we have evidence of attempted tampering, including these recorded conversations with various lawyers. As Walker spoke, I watched Hazel's face grow paler. Her carefully constructed plan was unraveling thread by thread. There's more, I added, nodding to Walker. He pulled out another document. This is a new, separate trust established by April. It's already been funded and approved, completely independent of the Wheeler Family Trust. You can't do that, Hazel sputtered. I already have. I met her eyes across the table. Everything I've earned, everything I've built, it's protected now. From you. This is ridiculous. Hazel turned to Jude. Are you going to let her do this? Jude picked up the papers, reading carefully. Did you really try to buy her off with a divorce settlement? The silence was damning. I think, Sophia said quietly, we all need to take a step back and... A sudden wave of dizziness hit me, stronger than before. I gripped the table edge, breathing deeply. April? Lisa squeezed my shoulder. Are you okay? I'm fine, I managed, but the room was spinning slightly. No, you're not. Sophia was suddenly beside me, her hand on my forehead. You're pale as a ghost. Jude knelt next to my chair, concern replacing anger. Should we call a doctor? No, I said, straightening up. But there is something else you all need to know. Something that makes all of Hazel's plans completely pointless. What are you talking about? Hazel demanded. I looked at my husband, then at my sister, and finally at Hazel. The moment I'd been waiting for had arrived sooner than planned, but maybe that was for the best. Well, I said, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach, it seems your concerns about heirs were a bit premature. The room went absolutely still as understanding dawned on their faces, all except Hazel, who looked like she'd been struck by lightning. No, she whispered. You can't be. I smiled, feeling stronger by the second. Oh, but I am. How far along? Jude's voice was barely a whisper as he gripped my hand. 8 weeks, I said softly. I found out the day after, well, after I overheard Hazel's plans. 8 weeks? Hazel's voice cracked. You've known for weeks and said nothing. Can you blame her? Sophia shot back. Look at how you've been behaving. Jude hadn't moved, his eyes fixed on my still flat stomach. We're having a baby? After all this time? Yes, I squeezed his hand. I wanted to tell you, but she needed leverage, Hazel cut in, her shock turning to anger. She manipulated all of us. That's rich coming from you, Lisa snapped. After everything you've done? Walker cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss the legal implications of this development. Legal implications? Hazel laughed bitterly. Oh yes, let's discuss those. How convenient that you suddenly become pregnant just when the inheritance is threatened. Jude stood up so quickly, his chair toppled backward. That's enough, Mother. You've gone too far. Have I? Hazel pulled another document from her pile. Then explain why your wife has been secretly meeting with doctors for months. Planning this, no doubt. Those were fertility treatments, I said calmly, which you knew about because you've been having me followed. The room fell silent again. Sophia gasped. You had her followed? Jude's voice was dangerous. My wife? Your own daughter-in-law? I was protecting our family. No, I stood up, steadier now. You were protecting your control. But here's what you don't understand, Hazel. I have proof of everything. The surveillance, the lawyer meetings, the attempts to bribe Lisa, the divorce settlement, everything. Walker opened his briefcase again. Including recorded conversations with your private investigator, quite detailed reports. You recorded me? Hazel's face went white. No, your investigator recorded you. Amazing what people will share when they realize they're working for someone unethical. Lisa moved closer to me. Is that why you kept the pregnancy secret? To catch her? Partly, I admitted, but also because I needed time to protect myself and the baby, to make sure Hazel couldn't interfere. The new trust, Sophia realized. It's for the baby, isn't it? I nodded. Among other things, it ensures that no one can use my child as a pawn in their games. Games? Hazel slammed her hand down. This is about legacy, about protecting what we've built. No, Jude's voice was firm. This was about control, and it ends now. He turned to Walker. What do we need to do to ensure my wife and child are protected? Everything's already in place, Walker replied. The new trust is established, and with April's pregnancy documented, all of Mrs. Wheeler's recent legal maneuvers are effectively nullified. You planned this perfectly, didn't you? Hazel's voice was quiet now, dangerous. Turned my own family against me. You did that yourself, Sophia said. We watched you try to destroy April, all while claiming it was for the family. The board will hear about this, Hazel threatened. Yes, they will. I pulled out my phone. In fact, I've already scheduled a meeting. They're very interested in hearing about your attempts to manipulate the family trust. Jude finally turned to face his mother. You need to leave. Now. Jude. Now, Mother. We'll discuss your role in this family's future another time. Hazel gathered her papers with shaking hands. At the door, she turned back. This isn't over. Actually, I called after her. It is. And Hazel, I'd start looking for a new private investigator. Yours works for me now. After she left, the tension in the room deflated like a balloon. Jude pulled me into his arms, his hand finding my stomach. A baby, he whispered. We're really having a baby. Lisa wiped tears from her eyes. I'm going to be an aunt. And I'm going to be the fun aunt, Sophia added, making us laugh. Walker began packing up his documents. I'll file everything first thing tomorrow. No one will be able to touch your inheritance or the baby's future. As everyone celebrated around me, I felt the weight of the past few weeks lifting. My hand joined Jude's on my stomach, where our little secret was growing stronger every day. The game was over, and I had won. But more importantly, I had protected what mattered most, my family's future, on my own terms. Now we could focus on what really mattered. Bringing a new life into the world, one that would never know the taste of manipulation or conditional love. The board meeting room felt colder than usual as I sat between Jude and Walker, facing the stern faces of the Wheeler family's executive board. Hazel sat opposite us, her perfect posture betraying no emotion, but her white-knuckled grip on her water glass told a different story. Let me be clear. The board chairman leaned forward. You're alleging that Mrs. Wheeler attempted to manipulate the family trust through illegal means. Not alleging, Walker replied, sliding a thick folder across the polished table. Proving. The chairman opened the folder, his eyebrows rising as he read. Private investigators? Attempted coercion? This is disturbing. It's all lies, Hazel interjected. April's trying to secure her position now that she's conveniently pregnant. Convenient? Jude's voice was sharp. Mother, do you have any idea what we went through with fertility treatments? The pain, the disappointment? The medical records are in there, I added quietly, along with documentation of how Hazel used our struggles against us. The board members passed the documents among themselves, their expressions growing darker with each page. And this new trust you've established? Another board member asked. That's separate from family holdings? Yes, Walker confirmed. Created solely to protect April and her child's interests, given the hostile environment. Hostile? Hazel laughed bitterly. I was protecting our legacy. By having me followed? I pulled out my phone, playing a recording. Hazel's voice filled the room, instructing her investigator to document my every move, every medical appointment. The colour drained from her face. Mrs. Wheeler, the chairman's voice was ice. Did you authorize surveillance on your daughter-in-law? I had concerns about her motives. Her motives? Sophia stood up from her seat in the back. What about yours? I have proof of you meeting with Lisa, trying to turn her against her own sister. Lisa, who sat quietly beside her, nodded. I'm willing to testify about everything she promised me in exchange for helping her break the trust. The chairman held up his hand. I think we've seen enough. This board has a responsibility to protect not just the family's assets, but its integrity. Exactly, Hazel straightened. And April has done nothing wrong, he cut her off. You, on the other hand, have demonstrated a disturbing pattern of behavior that threatens both the family's legal standing and its reputation. Jude squeezed my hand under the table as the chairman continued. Effective immediately, you are removed from all positions of authority within the family trust and companies. Your personal shares will remain intact, but you will have no voting power or decision-making authority. You can't do this! Hazel stood, shaking. I am a Wheeler. And I'm carrying the next Wheeler, I said, standing as well. One who will never know what it's like to have their worth measured by their ability to produce heirs. Furthermore, the chairman added, the board fully supports April's new independent trust. Given the circumstances, it's a prudent measure. Hazel turned to Jude, her last hope. Son, please. Everything I did was for you, for our family. Jude stood slowly. No, Mother. Everything you did was for control, and now you've lost it all. Security will escort you out. The chairman nodded to the guards at the door. Your personal effects will be sent home. As Hazel was led away, she turned back one last time. You'll regret this. All of you. The only regret, I called after her, is that it took us this long to see you for who you really are. After she left, the room erupted in discussion. Board members approached us with congratulations about the baby and assurances of their support. Lisa hugged me tightly, whispering apologies again, while Sophia chatted with Walker about finalizing the legal details. Are you okay? Jude asked quietly, his arm around my waist. Better than okay, I smiled, touching my stomach. For the first time, I feel like we can actually enjoy this pregnancy without looking over our shoulders. About that, the chairman approached us smiling. The board would like to establish an education trust for the baby, completely separate from family holdings, of course, a fresh start for the next generation. As we left the building, Lisa caught up with us. April, wait. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to be part of my niece or nephew's life. I want to make things right. I looked at my sister, seeing genuine remorse in her eyes. We'll take it one day at a time. The sunlight felt warmer somehow as we stepped outside. Hazel's car was gone from the parking lot, along with the shadow she'd cast over our lives. Ready to go home? Jude asked. Yes, I said, thinking of the nursery we could finally start planning. Let's go home. The nursery walls were halfway painted when Sophia burst in, waving her phone. You need to see this. I carefully set down my roller brush, my now visible baby bump making it harder to maneuver. What's wrong? Mother's selling her house, Sophia said, showing me the real estate listing. She's moving across the country. Jude stepped down from his ladder, where he'd been edging the ceiling. When did this happen? The listing went up this morning. She didn't tell anyone. I sat in the antique rocking chair we'd just restored, processing the news. Has anyone heard from her since the board meeting? Not directly, Sophia sighed. But her lawyer sent notice that she's liquidating her non-family assets. I guess this is really happening. The doorbell rang, and moments later, Lisa appeared in the doorway, looking flustered. Did you see? We just found out, I nodded. How are you feeling about it? Relieved, mostly. Lisa joined me by the window, watching leaves dance across our lawn, but also sad. Not for her exactly, but for what could have been. Jude's phone buzzed. It's Walker. The final trust paperwork is ready for signatures. Perfect timing, I said, struggling to get up from the rocker. Both Lisa and Sophia reached to help me, making me laugh. I'm pregnant, not invalid. Speaking of which, Sophia grinned, are we finally going to learn if I'm getting a niece or nephew? At tomorrow's appointment, Jude confirmed, helping me with my coat, assuming this little one cooperates with the ultrasound. At Walker's office, the mood was light as we signed the final documents. Lisa and Sophia served as witnesses, their signatures making it official. The new trust was ironclad, protecting both my child's future and my position in the family. One last thing, Walker said, pulling out an envelope. This came from Hazel's lawyer this morning. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. Inside was a single page. April, you won. I underestimated you, and I've paid the price. I'm leaving to start fresh somewhere else. Perhaps distance will give us all perspective. Take care of my grandchild. Hazel. That's it? Lisa peered over my shoulder. No apology? From Mother, Sophia scoffed. This is practically a surrender. Jude read the note, his jaw tight. It's better than nothing. At least she's acknowledging the baby. Speaking of acknowledging things, I turned to Lisa. I've been thinking, would you like to help me finish the nursery? There's a lot of work left, and I could use my sister's eye for design. Lisa's eyes welled up. Really? You mean it? Family is family, I said simply, even when it's complicated. Back home, as Lisa and Sophia argued playfully about color schemes and furniture placement, I found Jude staring at old family photos in the hallway. Having regrets? I asked softly. He turned, pulling me close. Only that I didn't see what was happening sooner, that I let her hurt you for so long. We all played our parts, I said, feeling our baby kick. But now we get to write our own story. April, Sophia called from the nursery. Come settle a debate. Lisa wants to do a forest theme, but I'm thinking space exploration. What do you think, little one? I rubbed my belly. Forest or space? The baby kicked again, making Jude laugh. I think that's a vote for space. As we rejoined our sisters in the nursery, I looked around at the half-painted walls, the scattered brushes, the paint swatches, and fabric samples spread across the floor. This chaos was real family. Messy, imperfect, but bound by love rather than obligation. You know what? I picked up my paint roller. Maybe we combine both themes. After all, who says we have to choose just one path? Lisa's face lit up. A magical forest under the stars, that's perfect. As we worked together, laughing and planning, I realized that victory wasn't just about winning against Hazel. It was about creating something new from the ashes of what was broken. Our child would grow up surrounded by authentic love, not manipulation. They would know their worth came from who they were, not what they could provide. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across our work in progress. There would be more challenges ahead, more stories to write, more bridges to build or burn. But for now, in this moment, watching my husband and sisters transform this room into a sanctuary for new beginnings, I knew we had already won the most important battle. We had broken the cycle, and that was worth more than any inheritance.
My younger brother secretly sold my $9 million farmhouse for just $3 million and called me, saying, I spent all the money on my girlfriend's business. She needed it more than you. I immediately canceled my trip and rushed home. But when I arrived, I just smiled because the farmhouse he sold was actually... I never thought I'd return to Grandfather Henry's farm like this. But life has a way of dragging you back to places you never planned on seeing again, especially when betrayal forces your hand. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, just as I was finishing up a research report on sustainable irrigation techniques in my Denver office. My phone buzzed, and I almost ignored it until I saw the name. Liam. We hadn't talked much in the past few years. He was always chasing his next business idea, and I was too buried in my work to get involved in family matters. But something in my gut told me to answer. Natalie. Liam's voice was too smug, too casual. I figure I should let you know, I sold the farm. For a moment, I thought I misheard. You what? The farm. Grandpa's farm. Got $900,000 for it. He said like it was just another deal, not the place where we spent our childhood summers, where Grandfather Henry built his entire life's work. My grip on the phone tightened. You sold it? Without even talking to me? Liam sighed, annoyed. Come on, Natalie. You haven't set foot on that land in years. You're too busy with your scientist life in Denver. The farm was just sitting there collecting dust. My chest burned with anger. You had no right to do that, Liam. He laughed, a sharp, careless sound. Actually, I did. I was named executor. That means I get to make the calls. I could barely process the words. Where's the money? There was a pause, then a chuckle. I spent it. I went cold. What do you mean, you spent it? My girlfriend, Olivia. Her business needed a boost, Liam said, as if that explained everything. She had this amazing investment opportunity, and she needed funds fast. I helped her out. I felt like the air had been knocked from my lungs. You sold our grandfather's farm for half of its real value and blew the money on Olivia's business? She needed it more than you. Liam shot back, defensive now. You don't need the money, Natalie. You have your career, your fancy research projects. What do you care about an old farm? I ended the call without another word. I didn't trust myself to speak. Within an hour, I had booked the next flight to Austin, Texas. The entire trip, my mind raced. How could Liam do this? He had always been reckless. But this wasn't just bad judgment. This was theft. By the time I landed, my anger had turned into something sharper. Determination. He thought he could get away with this. But he didn't know one thing. Grandfather Henry wasn't a fool. And I had a feeling he had seen this coming. When I arrived at the farm, or what was left of it, I felt a wave of emotions. Memories flooded back. Summer mornings feeding the horses, the smell of fresh soil after it rained, the sound of grandfather's laughter echoing from the front porch.
And now,
the land was abandoned, overgrown, the heart of our family sold like it was nothing. I needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them to me. Walter Bennett, my grandfather's longtime lawyer, was waiting when I arrived at his Dallas office the next morning. He looked up from his desk as I entered, his sharp eyes filled with something close to expectation. I was wondering when you'd show up, Natalie, he said, gesturing for me to sit. I didn't waste time. Liam sold the farm. Without my consent. He says he had the right. Walter sighed, tapping his fingers against a thick folder on his desk.
yes.
I received the notice yesterday. I stared at him. So that's it? He wins. Walter gave a small smile. That depends. Have you read your grandfather's final estate documents? A strange feeling stirred in my chest. I read the will. It left everything to both of us, but Liam was executor. Walter nodded. That's true. But your grandfather was a very careful man.
He slid the folder toward me.
2 weeks before he passed, he filed an amended deed. I hesitated before opening it. The first page immediately caught my eye. Character clause? I read aloud. Walter's expression turned serious. Henry knew Liam's weaknesses. He loved him, but he didn't trust him with the farm. So he added a safeguard. If either of you attempted to sell the farm without the other's agreement, ownership would immediately and irrevocably transfer to the wronged party. I blinked. Are you saying? Yes. Walter leaned back in his chair. The sale is void. The farm is yours, Natalie. A mix of relief and shock washed over me. Liam doesn't know about this, does he? Walter shook his head.
No.
And I'd advise not telling him until we call a legal meeting. I sat back, trying to process it all. Grandfather Henry had known. He had seen Liam's recklessness, his greed. And he had planned for it. I clenched my fists. So what now? Walter checked his watch.
Now?
You get ready. Because once Liam finds out, he's going to fight this. And something tells me he's not going down without a scene. That evening, I drove back to the farm. I stood on the overgrown land, the setting sun casting a golden glow over the empty fields. This farm wasn't just land. It was my grandfather's legacy. It was everything he had built, everything he had left behind. And Liam had tried to throw it away for a quick payout and a selfish dream. I pulled out my phone. Tomorrow, Liam would learn the truth. He thought he had won. He had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up early, my mind racing with everything that was about to happen. Liam had no idea that his so-called victory was about to collapse right in front of him. And knowing my brother, he wasn't going to take it well. By 10 a.m., I was sitting across from Walter Bennett in his office. He had already arranged a legal meeting, ensuring Liam and his lawyer would be present. I could tell Walter had seen plenty of messy family disputes in his career. But this was personal. Liam arrived 20 minutes late, of course. He strolled in like he owned the place, dressed in an expensive suit that he probably paid for with money he had no right to touch. Olivia followed behind him, her expression set in boredom, clearly annoyed at having to be here. His lawyer, a nervous-looking man barely out of law school, shuffled in behind them, looking overwhelmed. Liam smirked the second he saw me.
Wow, Natalie.
Didn't think you'd care enough to show up. I ignored the jab and gestured toward the empty chair across from me. Sit down. Liam flopped into the chair with an exaggerated sigh. Let's make this quick. I've got better things to do. Walter cleared his throat, ignoring the attitude. Liam, I assume you're aware that Natalie has concerns regarding the sale of your grandfather's farm. Liam rolled his eyes, leaning back. We've been over this. I was the executor. I had every legal right to sell the property. Walter calmly slid a document across the table. Actually, you didn't. Liam frowned but picked it up. As his eyes scanned the words, his smug expression faded. The arrogance drained from his face, and his hands tightened around the paper. For the first time, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, real fear. What is this? His voice wasn't as confident anymore. Walter steepled his fingers. That is the amended deed your grandfather filed 2 weeks before his passing. It contains a character clause stating that if one of his grandchildren attempted to sell the farm without the other's consent, ownership would automatically and irrevocably transfer to the wronged party. Liam's face paled.
No.
That can't be right. Oh, but it is, I said, my voice steady. The moment you signed that sale agreement, you lost everything. The farm belongs to me now. Liam slammed the document on the table. This is a setup, he snapped. Grandpa wouldn't do this to me. Walter remained calm. Henry Carter knew his grandchildren well, Liam. He knew Natalie would protect the farm, and he knew you, well, let's just say he anticipated your actions. Liam turned to his lawyer, his voice frantic. Do something. The young man shifted in his seat uncomfortably. Legally speaking, the amendment is binding. The sale is void. Olivia crossed her arms, her voice sharp. So, what does that mean? The money is gone. We already spent it. That's your problem, I said, my tone icy cold. Liam's face twisted in frustration as he pushed away from the table and stood up. You can't just take everything from me. I met his glare. I didn't take it. You threw it away. A heavy silence stretched through the room. Liam had lost.
Completely.
Walter sighed and slid another document forward. There's one more issue. As executor, you had a legal duty to uphold the estate's integrity. By selling the farm without Natalie's consent, you violated those duties. He tapped the paper. Effective immediately, you are removed as executor. Liam stared at the paper like it was a death sentence. You're joking. Nope, I said, leaning forward. I'm in charge now. Olivia suddenly stood, grabbing Liam's arm. Liam, we need to go. Liam was frozen in place, still staring at the document. I knew what was going through his mind. He had lost everything. The farm, the money, the control. Walter wasn't done. He picked up another file. One last thing, since the sale is void, that means you owe the estate every single dollar you received from it. Liam visibly swallowed. I don't have the money. I leaned back in my chair. Then we have a problem, don't we? Olivia, clearly furious, yanked on Liam's arm again. Liam, we're leaving. But before they could reach the door, Walter spoke one last time. Oh, and Liam? He turned, shoulders tense. Any attempt to challenge this legally will result in a full estate audit. Walter's tone was calm but firm, which means every single financial transaction you made as executor will be investigated. Liam's jaw clenched. He knew exactly what that meant. Every shady deal, every dollar he had funneled into Olivia's business, exposed. He didn't say another word. He just stormed out, Olivia trailing behind him, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. As the door swung shut behind them, I finally exhaled. It was over. At least, I thought it was. That night, I sat on Grandfather Henry's old porch, staring out at the land, the cool Texas air settling around me. I should have felt relief, but something nagged at me. Liam was reckless. But he wasn't stupid. He had to know this was a possibility. He had to know Grandfather Henry would have planned for this. Then why was he so desperate? My phone buzzed. A text from Liam. "We need to talk." I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. This wasn't over. I stared at Liam's message for a long time. "We need to talk." A part of me wanted to ignore it. I had won. The farm was legally mine, and Liam had lost every ounce of control. But I knew my brother. He didn't just walk away, not without a backup plan. Finally, I replied, "Meet me at the farmhouse. 1 hour." By the time I arrived, the sky had darkened, and the air smelled of damp earth, the kind of scent that always came before a storm. The land stretched out in front of me, the fences still broken, the crops overgrown. This place had been abandoned for too long. Liam pulled up in his SUV 10 minutes late, his headlights cutting through the shadows. He got out slowly, looking different this time, tired, nervous. Olivia wasn't with him. For once, it was just the two of us. He shoved his hands into his pockets, avoiding my eyes. "You got what you wanted." I leaned against the porch railing. "Did I?" Liam let out a bitter laugh. "Spare me the lecture, Natalie. You think you're the hero in all this." He gestured at the land. "You left. You had your career, your research, your perfect life. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who took care of everything." I tilted my head, watching him carefully. "You didn't take care of anything, Liam. You sold Grandfather's farm for a quick payday and burned through the money like it was nothing."
His jaw tightened.
"I was trying to build something." I crossed my arms. "And where is it now?" He didn't answer. And that told me everything. Something in my gut twisted. "Liam, this isn't just about the farm, is it?" He hesitated, his eyes darting away, and for the first time in a long time, I saw it. Fear. I stepped closer. "How bad is it?" Liam ran a hand through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. "I borrowed against Grandfather's other accounts." I felt my stomach drop. "What?" He exhaled sharply. "The estate's tax accounts, the maintenance funds, the savings, everything. I pulled from them, thinking I could pay it back before anyone noticed." His voice cracked. "But the investment tanked, the developer went bankrupt, and now," he let out a hollow laugh. "Now it's gone." I felt physically sick. "How much?" His voice barely rose above a whisper. $750,000. The world tilted for a second. I pressed my fingers against my forehead, forcing myself to think. "So, that's why you were so desperate to sell the farm." Liam nodded, looking miserable. "I thought I could fix it before anyone found out." I closed my eyes. "And Olivia?" His laugh was humorless.
"She left."
"Took what little she could and ran the second she realized there was nothing left." A long silence stretched between us. I should have walked away. I should have told Liam this was his mess to fix. But then I thought of Grandfather Henry, of the way he had always believed in second chances. And despite everything, Liam was still my brother. I pulled out my phone and dialed Walter. He answered on the second ring. "I need to see you," I said.
"Now."
An hour later, Liam and I sat in Walter's office. Walter, unshaken as always, didn't seem surprised when I told him everything. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "Your grandfather knew this was a possibility," Walter said, sliding the file toward me. "So, he planned for it." I flipped through the pages, my heart racing. Insurance policies, financial safeguards, legal contingencies, things Grandfather Henry had set up long before he passed. Walter tapped one document. "This is an insurance policy covering unauthorized estate investments." If triggered, it allows for recovery of up to $800,000. Liam let out a breath like he'd been punched. So, we're covered? Walter's gaze hardened. Not exactly. There are conditions. Liam braced himself. Of course there are. Walter leaned forward. First, you must sign an official admission of wrongdoing. That means formally acknowledging your misuse of estate funds. Liam stiffened. And if I don't? Walter's face didn't change. Then Natalie will have no choice but to file a legal claim against you, which would trigger a full forensic audit of the estate's finances. He paused. Given the evidence, it's likely you'd be charged with fraud. Liam's face drained of color. Fraud? Yes, Walter said simply. And that would mean prison time. Liam's hand shook slightly as he wiped it over his face. And the other conditions? Walter folded his hands. You will be required to attend financial counseling at your own expense. And you will have no further involvement in the estate. Ever. Liam turned to me. His voice wasn't angry anymore, it was almost pleading. And you're okay with this? I held his gaze. I don't want to see you in prison, Liam. But I'm not going to protect you from the consequences of what you did. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then slowly he nodded. Fine. Walter slid the admission document forward. Liam took the pen with shaking hands and signed. And just like that, it was over. We stepped outside into the night air. Liam stood by his car, staring out at the city skyline. I don't know what to do now, he admitted. I hesitated before answering. You start over. Liam let out a weak laugh.
How?
I sighed, studying him. The brother I had grown up with, the one who had lost himself chasing the wrong things. The farm still needs fixing, I said after a pause. You could help. His head snapped toward me, eyes wide with surprise. You'd let me? I met his gaze. You're still my brother, Liam. But this isn't about money anymore. If you want a second chance, you have to earn it. He didn't answer right away. But after a long pause, he nodded. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to fix what was broken. The days after the meeting with Walter felt heavy, filled with long silences and the weight of everything that had happened. I had spent so long angry at Liam, convinced that he would never change, that it felt strange to see him now, humbled, uncertain, and lost. But there we were, standing on Grandfather Henry's farm, staring at the overgrown fields, the broken fences, and the house that had once been filled with life. I barely recognize it, Liam muttered. I glanced at him. Yeah, well, that's what happens when someone tries to sell a place instead of taking care of it. Liam exhaled sharply, but didn't argue. He wasn't fighting anymore. And for the first time in years, I could see something shifting in him. We spent the next week clearing out the old barn, fixing the fences, and assessing the damage caused by years of neglect and bad decisions. Liam wasn't used to this kind of work, and at first he struggled. But he showed up every morning, and to my surprise, he never complained. One evening, after an exhausting day of repairing the porch steps, I found him sitting on the front steps, staring out at the land as the sun dipped below the horizon. The golden light cast long shadows over the fields, the same view that Grandfather Henry used to love. I used to hate this place, Liam admitted, his voice quiet, hesitant. I thought it was a trap. A reminder of everything I didn't want to be. I sat down beside him, wiping the sweat from my forehead. And now? He was silent for a long time before sighing. Now, I think I get it. Grandpa wasn't trying to hold us back. He was giving us something that actually mattered. I nodded, watching the wind move through the tall grass. He always thought 5 moves ahead. Liam chuckled, though there wasn't much humor in it. Yeah. And I never thought past the next dollar sign. The next few months passed in a rhythm of hard work and quiet realizations. Liam stuck with it, something I honestly hadn't expected. At first, I kept my guard up, waiting for him to give up, to run when things got hard. But he didn't. He learned how to fix the equipment, how to plant crops properly, how to care for the land the way Grandfather had. And slowly, I realized that he wasn't just doing it for me. He was doing it for himself. One afternoon, we stood in the middle of the restored barn, the scent of fresh hay in the air. Liam wiped his hands on his jeans, glancing around. It actually looks like a real farm again. That's because it is. He let out a deep breath, nodding. Feels different. I studied him. You feel different? Liam hesitated before nodding.
Yeah.
For the first time, I believed him. A year after everything had fallen apart, we held a ceremony in Grandfather Henry's honor. We invited neighbors, old friends, and the few people in town who had known him well. Liam stood next to me as we unveiled a memorial plaque near the farmhouse. It simply read, "Henry Carter, a man who built more than land." As the sun set over the farm, I realized something. Grandfather had always planned for this. Not just for the land, not just for the money, but for us. He had known that Liam and I would never truly see eye to eye until something forced us to. He had built in safeguards, knowing Liam's weaknesses, but he had left the door open for redemption. And Liam had finally stepped through it. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I found Liam sitting on the porch, watching the stars. "Still thinking about running back to Austin?" I asked. He smirked.
Nah.
Turns out I like the quiet. I sat down beside him, letting the cool night air settle around us. "Do you think Grandfather knew this would happen?" Liam asked after a while. I thought about it before answering.
Yeah.
I think he knew exactly what he was doing. Liam sighed, a small smile on his lips.
Yeah.
Me too. And for the first time in a long time, we sat there not as enemies, not as rivals, but as family.
We are going to live in this house as a family. You should be grateful, you know? My mother-in-law said, looking down at me with a gentle smile. How rude she is. She said that despite the fact that my mother had passed away from illness not long ago, it was certainly unpleasant to hear my mother-in-law, with whom I had no connection, cheerfully talk about renovating the house. She came suddenly, even though the funeral hadn't taken place yet, without offering a single word of condolence. Instead, there she was, talking happily about living with her son, ignoring me as I was consumed by tears. It seems to her the family only includes her son, and I am like an outsider. She waved her hand at me as if she was shooing away a pest. I'm saying we'll live as a family. Did you think a daughter-in-law with no blood relation would be treated as family? My name is Tracy, and I'm 30 years old. I have an older brother I respect, who is 5 years older than me. We've always been very close, and he has always been there to help me on anything. When I was having trouble with friends in elementary school, he would go directly to them and ask them to be kind to me for my sake. He might be a bit overprotective, but he's a reliable brother who cares deeply for his sister. During my rebellious phase in middle and high school, he often confronted our parents strongly, but he always treated me warmly. He was always there to support me when I was in trouble, a person I could rely on. Don't worry about what others think. I support you, Tracy, he would say, and I used to be envious of his attitude. He also said, when our father passed away from cancer during my university years, I was truly grateful to my teachers and parents. They were the ones who always thought of me and scolded me as he reflected on his past, which was surprising to hear from my once mischievous brother. It was rare to hear him talk about the past, and it made me want to become a respected figure like his teachers and our parents. This experience nurtured in me a desire to support children in their growth and those facing difficulties, leading me to choose a career in teaching. While everyone around me was busy job hunting, I focused solely on preparing for the teacher recruitment exams. I still remember the surprised look on my brother's face when I passed the exam and told him and our mother, "Congratulations. I never thought you would become a teacher, Tracy. Good luck," he said, supporting me. Despite landing my dream job in teaching, reality was not as sweet as I had expected. I was busy every day with lesson preparations and student guidance, with late work becoming the norm. As remote work became more widespread, those in the teaching profession had no such option, forcing me to commute on crowded trains every morning. Weekends and holidays often required attendance for club activities. Additionally, living independently and managing a household as an adult made me acutely aware of the difficulties of domestic tasks. I remember struggling both physically and mentally in my first year as a working adult. Yet, I felt fulfilled in my role as an educator. As I became more accustomed to my teaching life, I started noticing odd behaviors and words from my mother. Conversations over the phone became difficult, and she would quickly forget things we had just talked about. Concerned, I visited my family home and was shocked to see garbage scattered everywhere. My normally tidy mother was confused about why things had gotten to that point, saying she had forgotten to take out the trash or that she had already cleaned up. Sharing the situation with my brother, we decided to go to the hospital together, where the diagnosis was unexpected. Our mother was diagnosed with dementia. Though it was early-stage mild cognitive impairment, her communication with other people had decreased since our father's passing, and her condition had gradually become more apparent. This situation increased my interactions with my brother and naturally led to more frequent visits to our family home. During these visits, my brother and I often discussed the future. Amidst my busy life, a friend introduced me to Steve when I was too overwhelmed with work and household management to find any personal enjoyment. My friend, insisting I needed time to relax, invited me out for drinks, where I met Steve. He worked for a foreign company and was deeply interested in the international aspect of my job as a French teacher. He was sincere and always prioritized me. The time spent with Steve was a happy moment in my busy days. Just having a meal together for a short while made all the fatigue disappear. I was drawn to him, and after dating for 2 years, on a day that wasn't special, he reserved a private room in a restaurant in New York City for us. Unexpectedly, he gave me a ring and proposed, saying, "I want to make you happy, Tracy. I want to marry you," but I couldn't answer right away. The reason was the anticipated burden of caring for my mother as her condition worsened. Steve was aware of my mother's situation, but I hesitated to involve him in this issue. Nonetheless, he encouraged me, saying, "If you're worried about your mother's situation, don't be. I want to support her together with you." I remember barely being able to say yes through my tears. When I decided to marry Steve at 27, we discussed it in advance and also consulted with my brother about my mother's future. As a result, we decided to build a duplex house where we could live together with my mother, using our marriage as the opportunity. From then on, I started receiving more frequent contacts from my mother-in-law. Before the marriage, my interaction with her was limited to greetings and face-to-face meetings. Initially, I felt her interest was minimal, but I sensed a reason behind her frequent recent contacts. Eventually, it became clear that the main content of these contacts was about the new house we planned to build. "I heard you're building a new house. What's the floor plan like? I'm curious about my son's new home. Can I see it?" As soon as we started talking, she made countless suggestions about the house's design, such as, the kitchen would be better if it were larger, the staircase would be more suitable here, not there. Why not make the room next to the living room a guest room? Floor heating is a must since this area gets quite cold in the winter. I was uncomfortable with my mother-in-law, who wasn't going to live with us, meddling, but Steve stepped in to mediate to avoid conflict. Despite this, my mother-in-law persistently contacted me directly. Suspecting some ulterior motive, I discussed it with Steve. "Your mother's behavior feels like she plans to live there herself. I'm worried she might be plotting something. Even if you talk to her, she contacts me directly, and I don't know how to respond. Yeah, there must be some reason for that. Don't worry, I'll handle it from now on. You can ignore all contacts from my mom. But won't she feel bad about that? It's fine. She's acting out of line. I'll talk to her. However, given her nature, she might try to contact you again. In that case, it's okay to avoid her call and ignore it." With Steve's support, I avoided further contact with my mother-in-law. The house design was finalized, and construction on the new home began. We planned to move into the new house in 6 months, and packing was going smoothly when the contacts with my mother-in-law had almost ceased. Steve informed his mother of the completion date of the new house, but she didn't seem to react much. Half a year passed, and the new house was completed. The first floor was arranged with a living room, kitchen, and a spacious room for my mother, while the second floor was our couple's space with individual rooms. However, by the time the new house was completed, my mother's health had begun to decline. During the day, when we were at work, my mother spent a lot of time alone, and I often came home to find the house in disarray. The doctor had warned that limiting her activities could lead to a rapid progression of her symptoms, so we had her do small tasks during the day. Yet, actions that had been easy for her became increasingly difficult. While she retained her cooking ability, she often left pans on the stove after use. She would forget to add detergent when using the washing machine or add too much, resulting in excessive foam. Despite having the newspaper right beside her, she would complain, "The newspaper didn't come today until the evening." The challenges posed by my mother's condition were countless, and my brother and I decided to use daycare services during the day. At first, my mother was confused by the unfamiliar environment, but having companions during the day gradually made her smile more. When she came home, she would talk about making paper crafts or participating in events at the children's center. My mother gradually adapted to this new routine, and her condition seemed to temporarily stabilize, but it didn't last long. Just 2 years later, my mother seemed to have caught an off-season cold, but ultimately, she passed away from pneumonia. Just maintaining daily life seemed to deplete her strength, and she couldn't eat properly due to a lack of appetite, leading to a weakened immune system. I couldn't stop crying and couldn't recover from the sudden event. Yet, administrative tasks such as contacting the city hall, notifying relatives, and arranging funeral services piled up and waited for no one. As I began to prepare for the funeral, my mother-in-law arrived with a lot of luggage. Seeing her ready to stay over, I was grateful she came to help with the funeral preparations and welcomed her, saying, "Thank you so much for coming during this busy time. Please come in." However, as soon as she stepped inside, she made an unexpected statement. "I will live in this house." Surprised and at a loss for words, I couldn't make a rebuttal when she said, "If you don't like it, you can leave. Steve and I will live here." She said that without a word of condolence. I was utterly confused by her sudden, self-centered declaration. Ignoring my bewilderment, my mother-in-law continued, "I've waited 2 years, and finally, I can live here. How about it? Is the floor plan to my liking?" As she began to walk around the house. At that moment, I understood why she had been contacting us so frequently before. Perhaps she had always intended to move into the home we built. She tried to change the floor plan to her liking and believed that I should receive her instructions rather than Steve, which might explain her persistent contacts. She seemed to have rushed over after hearing about my mother's death from Steve. That's when the shocked Steve said, "Mom, didn't you know? The owner of this house isn't me. It was Tracy's mother." What? Moreover, when Tracy's mother passed away, the heir would be Tracy's brother. What does that mean? My mother-in-law, glaring at me, said, "The homeowner should be the husband. Steve earns more, and your salary couldn't possibly cover the mortgage. You must be relying entirely on Steve's earnings. This house might as well be Steve's." Really, what an incomprehensible daughter-in-law and her family. "What do you think, Steve?" Steve tried to explain. "No, Mom. Listen, it's okay, Steve. Let me explain," I interjected. My mother-in-law turned her sharp gaze from Steve to me and challenged, "What are you trying to say?" "The mortgage is being paid by my brother and me. I cover the payments with my income, and I have never taken money from Steve. Is that true, Steve?" "Yes, it's true." I continued, "When we built this house, we decided it would eventually go to my brother. Now that my mother has passed away, the home will be for my brother, his wife, and her parents to live in," I explained calmly. My mother-in-law was stunned and speechless, but unable to accept the arrangement. She said, "I can't accept that. After living with and caring for your parents, it's natural that it would be my turn next. I've been waiting for this day. This is too unreasonable. You know, I have a lawyer acquaintance. I'll talk to him and proceed with renouncing the inheritance." Of course, we had no intention of doing so, but my mother-in-law was clearly agitated. My brother will be arriving soon, so let's discuss this again when he's here. I will express my opinion directly to your brother and ask for his renunciation. I'm the type to speak my mind, so my position won't change even when your brother arrives. After this statement, my mother-in-law waited in the living room until my brother arrived. Steve, while confused, repeatedly apologized to me. Don't worry. It seems she won't be convinced by just my word, so let's talk again with my mother when my brother arrives. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was on the phone with a lawyer she knew, moving forward with the discussion on renouncing the inheritance. Regarding the renunciation of inheritance, yes, I believe the person in question will agree. Yes, please prepare the necessary documents if there's progress. My mother-in-law spoke politely on the phone. About an hour later, the sound of a car parking outside was heard. My brother had arrived. Mother, my brother has arrived. As I called out to her, she stood up eagerly, saying, I will have this house transferred to Steve. Then I can live here, and proceeded to the living room. At that moment, the living room door opened, and my brother appeared. My mother-in-law, about to shout something, took a deep breath and opened her mouth wide. But as she opened her mouth, no sound came out, and she looked surprised, losing her strength and sitting down heavily. In fact, my brother's appearance could be mistaken for someone from the underworld by some due to his quite intimidating look. His hobby is surfing. Furthermore, as he works outdoors throughout the year, his skin is sunburned, and the sun damage has made his hair brittle. As a result, finding hair maintenance troublesome, he chose to have a shaved head. Also, he is tall and has a muscular and sturdy physique. Especially noticeable is an old scar on his forehead. This scar was the result of a fall during his elementary school years. But combined with his appearance, many people mistake it for a scar from a blade. Seeing such a brother in person, my mother-in-law seemed to lose her will and slumped down to sit. Do you have anything you would like to say about this house? My brother coldly asked my mother-in-law. No, I had thought I would live here after your mother passed away. But then I heard that you would be living here, and I realized I understood nothing. Did Tracy tell you to live here? We had a thorough discussion about this house before it was built, so I believe there was no such conversation. He spoke in a firm tone. No, I misunderstood. Because I was involved in planning the layout with Tracy before the house was built, I assumed I had a right to live here too. My mother-in-law said, clearly confused and looking down. A right to live here? Does that mean you were offering some sort of support to my sister? No, nothing like that. So, without bearing any burden or making any promises, you just assumed you had a right to live here just by offering your opinion on the layout? Yes, I'm sorry. It was my misunderstanding. At first, my brother looked at me suspiciously, but he refuted my mother-in-law's unreasonable claim with disgust. However, to my mother-in-law, it seemed more like anger than disgust, and she apologized deeply, becoming surprisingly docile. Just because our mother passed away doesn't mean there was ever a discussion about living with my sisters-in-laws. Right, Tracy? Of course. I never discussed the details of this house with my mother-in-law. I only mentioned it was a house for living together with my mother. As I answered my brother's question, my mother-in-law suddenly covered her face with both hands. I had believed that my son, Steve, was the owner of this house. After caring for your mother, I thought it was my turn to live with you. But taking care of an unfamiliar elderly person is difficult. So I thought I would wait until your mother-in-law passed away. When I received the news of her death from my son, I thought it was my turn and terminated my apartment lease. Now, I have nowhere to go. I didn't expect such a rash action without any promise. Either way, after my sister and her husband move out, this house is intended for us to live in. I'm sorry, but we have no intention of living with a stranger who's been disrespectful to us. Please leave. My mother-in-law might be pretending to be humble, but her words revealed contempt for our mother. My brother, too, avoided yelling directly at my mother-in-law, a figure related to me, but his anger was gradually rising, and his voice became lower and colder. When my mother-in-law looked at us for help, we reiterated that she should leave. Actually, due to Steve's job, we will be moving abroad soon. Yeah, Mom, I work for a multinational company and there's always been a possibility of overseas assignment, right? We've talked about this possibility before. We had decided to continue caring for my mother until we moved abroad, a decision discussed with my brother, and Steve supported it. Unfortunately, with my mother's passing, we will follow the original plan, and my brother and his wife will live here. Such a thing. Seeing the disappointment on my mother-in-law's face, Steve and I exchanged looks. Then sighing, we continued. If you've terminated your apartment and have nowhere to go, how about coming abroad with us? We made the offer to move abroad, expecting her to refuse. I hate flying, right? I don't even have a passport. But if you have nowhere to live, you'll have to find somewhere new. Steve said, looking slightly worried. Still, applying for a passport now would take time, and preparing for an international move can't be done quickly. We're leaving soon, so it's probably impossible. My mother-in-law's previous energy had faded, and she appeared dejected. Seeing this, Steve made a suggestion. Should I talk to John? Wait, I can't go to John's place. Don't contact him. My mother-in-law quickly said, John is Steve's brother. My mother-in-law was eager to live in our house but adamantly refused to live with Steve's brother, John. But if you have nowhere else to live, what choice do you have? What do you think? As Steve spoke, my mother-in-law, unable to argue, looked down, then suddenly looked up and said, Then, can you just give me money? I absolutely refuse to live with that daughter-in-law. Steve sighed in exasperation as he began to make a phone call. My mother-in-law shrieked, trying to snatch the phone away, but as soon as the call connected, she backed off. It seemed that John's wife had agreed to take my mother-in-law in. Afterward, we hurried to proceed with the funeral preparations and other necessary arrangements, leaving the rest to that side of the family. When my brother and I returned to the living room after finishing our conversation, my mother-in-law was silently sitting on a chair, apparently displeased with the idea of going to John's house. Now we can finally start preparing for the funeral. We still have a little time, so let's get the preparations going and wait, Steve suggested. Agreeing with his proposal, the three of us started listing what needed to be done. An hour passed, and when the doorbell rang, it was John's wife standing at the door. Hi there. She had the appearance of a typical gal from a bygone era, dressed in eye-catching clothes, wearing a top with a deeply open neckline that day. She's straightforward with her opinions and, despite her casual appearance, dislikes in fairness, being both direct and friendly. It seemed she would get along well with my brother. However, my mother-in-law harbored a dislike for her. My condolences for your loss. I rushed over, so please excuse my attire, she said politely, which surprised me a bit. However, as soon as John's wife was led into the living room and saw my mother-in-law, she changed her demeanor and said, Oh, come on, Grandma, cut it out already. Don't trouble Steve and Tracy anymore. Let's go home, and she helped my mother-in-law to stand up. Originally, we had discussed living together, so if you had just agreed to that proposal from the start, you might have been spending your days more peacefully by now. The pride of the elderly can be quite formidable. Anyway, excuse us for taking her away. We've caused you enough trouble for today. With that declaration, she took my mother-in-law away promptly, apologizing deeply as they left. Actually, my brother and his wife had been proposing for a while that our mother live with them. Despite her unconventional appearance, she's incredibly caring, and when they got married, she promised, we'll take good care of her. However, our mother refused to live with her, choosing to live alone consistently. She's really got a unique personality, Steve said, reflecting on this with a bittersweet smile. There's goodness at her core, and my brother is also reliable, so it's likely that our mother will find stability in her new home with them. As Steve predicted, my mother-in-law started living with John and his wife without any issues. With John's wife around, it became difficult for her to behave selfishly, and she now seems to be living relatively peaceful days. Perhaps this somewhat strict environment suits her. She's always complaining, but she never actually tries to do anything on her own and doesn't seem to want to live by herself. She just likes to grumble, Steve said, watching his mother's behavior with a resigned chuckle. The house we built is now inhabited by John and his wife, according to the plan we had set. It has become a warm space that deepens family bonds, with John's wife's parents recently joining the household, starting a multi-generational living arrangement. As agreed upon from the beginning, the mortgage is now shared between John and his wife's parents. I am currently in Paris, France, where my husband, Steve, was assigned for work. Initially, there was some apprehension about living in an unfamiliar land. Fortunately, my proficiency in French proved to be a blessing, allowing me to quickly adapt and integrate into the local community. Leveraging my experience as a French teacher in the US, I've taken up teaching English in France. The work environment here differs from the US, with reasonable working hours that allow for personal time. With guaranteed weekends off, Steve and I now enjoy much more time together, experiencing new stimuli every day and leading a more relaxed life. Thus, we are spending our days meaningfully in a different environment from the US, learning and enjoying life in a new land.